Craig from 1980, the Miracle on Ice, the last time the Mammoth won the gold medal. It was a hell of a game, man. It was as intense as anything I've watched as far as just from a spectator standpoint as a sports fan in a long, long time. Hopefully you were able to get up and check it out live. Your boy doesn't get up for anything. Maybe golf. Yeah. And Olympic hockey, apparently. But it was an awesome game. Closing ceremonies come and go last night. I thought it was an unbelievable Olympic winter cycle. Now the Winter Olympic Games head to the French Alps in 4 years. And then 4 years after that, back here in Salt Lake City. So I thought it was a great Olympic Games. Had a chance to consume a good portion of it. We'll talk about it and kind of review it and talk about what this could mean for the sport, what this could mean for the National Hockey League. Now, Clayton Keller, our lone rep, did not get much ice time, if at all, over the course of the tournament, but I would imagine really cool experience for that young man. And the Utah Mammoth will be back at it coming up on Wednesday against Colorado. My guess is most of these hockey venues are going to be packed for quite some time. I think the interest in the sport will take a little bit of a spike, just as it did back in 1980. So we'll do some Olympic conversation on the program today. Of course, we'll talk some pro and college basketball. The Utah Utes, oh, man, another close one here in Salt Lake at the Huntsman Center. You know, after handling their business on the road against West Virginia, and UCF came in without their leading scorer and actually had another one of their key cogs limited a little bit. Thought the Utes had a chance to get that win. Close game, but UCF and Johnny Dawkins leave Salt Lake with a 73-71 victory. Utah falls now to 2-12 in the Big 12 play, 2-12 in the Big 12, and 10-17 overall. UCF is right on the line. That's a tournament team, 19-7. 8-6 overall. They are tied now with BYU. Speaking of BYU, that was their best win of the season. The first Quad 1A win for the Cougars took place Saturday night against Iowa State without one of their best players. Of course, Richie Saunders is out for the year. A near triple-double for who I think right now is probably the front runner for the player of the year. I don't know that he's going to be the number one overall pick. We're going to talk about this today with the Darren Peterson stuff getting super weird. But A.J. DeBonsa, along with Cam Boozer, as Duke beat Michigan over the weekend, are probably the two names as of now atop the list to win the college basketball player of the year. Of course, the last time that happened in BYU, it was a guy named James Taft Fredette, better known as Jimmer, who now has his jersey hanging from the rafters. So BYU beats Iowa State in Provo on Saturday night. And only 4 or 5 games left for most teams before tournament time. So we'll do some college basketball on the program. Yusuf Nurkic is out for the season. So it was announced just a few minutes ago that Yusuf Nurkic, I think he's having a procedure done on his toe or his foot, and he will miss the rest of the year. Angry NBA players over the weekend, more fights, some good games. We got a light night of NBA basketball tonight, but the Utah Jazz are actually on national television. San Antonio, Detroit, 5 o'clock on Peacock. Then the Jazz and the Rockets from Houston at 7:30. Sandwich in between is Sacramento, Memphis, two teams not trying to win this year. So we'll do some NBA on the show, on the program today. Real Salt Lake, question mark. Maybe it was the Real Monarchs. Look, here's the deal. We're going to talk a little RSL today. Soccer season opened over the weekend. And ultimately, as a result of some injuries picked up in training and some visa issues, the starting 11 was released, and I'm like, huh? What? But they showed pretty well. Now, they lost. We're not about moral victories on this program. They lost 1-0. There was a goal that was called off. I want to ask Kurt this today. The replay seemed very much inconclusive. It was an REPO goal with the assist from Alex Katranis. And Ari was on sides, I'll tell you that much right now. But the replay of Katranis was pretty inconclusive as well. So they nearly were able to grab one. But Chase, our guy over at RSL, and everybody that's in charge of trying to get these players ready to go, working hard behind the scenes to get visas done, paperwork done, and hopefully some of these players will get healthy. Seattle Sounders in town on Saturday for the home opener for RSL. So we'll bounce around, do a little bit of everything today. Our first guest, triumphant return of Sarah Todd, who covers the Utah Jazz for the Deseret News. We'll talk about The final 23 to 25 games of the season for the Jazz. What Sarah thinks about the Jaren Jackson Jr. trade, and bounce around a little bit with Sarah. Nick Olachek. Pumped to have Nick on the show today to talk U.S. men's hockey, Mammoth hockey. What could this seminal moment mean for the game of hockey and the league of the National Hockey League? The new beat writer for the Utah Jazz from the Salt Lake Tribune is our friend Kevin Reynolds, who's done a really good job on the college football side of things, namely with BYU. But he's going to slide over and take Andy Larson's job as Andy steps away from covering sports. The Kurt Schmidt, as I referenced, we're going to do a little RSL with RSL's technical director on the program today. Look back on the loss against Vancouver. Look ahead to the match against Seattle. With Kurt on a Monday. So, Sarah Todd, Nick Olachek, Kevin Reynolds, Kurt Schmidt, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners. And that guy, Olympic hockey expert Porter Larson, did you wake up at 6 a.m. to watch this game live?
Of course.
Are you telling the truth?
I absolutely am.
Okay, good.
Enjoyed it. Obviously, one of those where regardless of your fandom of hockey, of the U.S. team, of Canada's team, when it comes down to a gold medal, it's got that feeling of a Game 7, right? And with hockey, when you go to extra period, it adds to the excitement. From a viewing perspective, from an entertainment perspective, I have always struggled to get all on board with hockey. I think sometimes it's difficult to watch on television, to follow the puck. I think sometimes and this is my ADD speaking, I forget that hockey's going on during one of the several breaks during the game. Zero of those issues on Sunday. It was a captivating experience, and then of course ending off in just awesome fashion.
Yeah, it was fun, man. It was a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys were able to catch that live. We'll talk about it on the show today, a busy Monday show. Our first guest, our friend Sarah Todd from the Deseret News. But before Sarah joins us, courtesy of our good friends at Prize Picks, it is time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN700 with Prize Picks.
Our good friends at Prize Picks are hooking you up. If you haven't taken advantage of this offer just yet, you got to get to it. So, Prize Picks, as of now, is giving you $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. Don't even have to win. They're just going to hook you up with $50. Prize Picks giving you $50 in lineups. When you sign up and play your first $5, Prize Picks makes every dunk, every dime, and every board that much more exciting. So don't miss the chance to get started on America's #1 app for sports picks, our friends at Prize Picks, which is available here in Utah, so no worries there. They've got a new feature out right now. We have early payouts. If your player gets off to a hot start, you have the option to cash out the winnings before the game even finishes. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Promo code ESPN700. So you get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup, because on Prize Picks, it is good to be right. I'll tell you what, there's something about the Olympics, and there's something about hockey specifically, at least in the winter cycle, that seems to captivate the attention of a country that by every measurable metric is not a hockey country. In fact, there was a poll, and we referenced this a couple of weeks ago, a data poll, I want to say it was Politico. I can't remember exactly. I'll look it up. But the new kind of hierarchy of favorite sports, both in the world and then in America, as the World Cup is just about 5-6 weeks away from kind of, converging on our region, where the largest sporting event in the world, soccer's World Cup, will take place here. And hockey, as it pertains to the favorite sport choices of Americans, it's football #1 by far these days. It's basketball #2. And then for the first time, as this younger generation has grown up, it's now soccer #3, because a lot of the younger generation, they're very much into soccer in a way that my generation was not. And certainly the generation before me that dismissed it as a communist sport. But now that the game has been played, I'm talking about soccer here, domestically since the creation of Major League Soccer after the 1994 World Cup, we've seen these kids now grow into adults and consumers. So football 1, basketball 2, soccer 3, And then neck and neck for 4, it's hockey and baseball. I mean, we're moving into a reality where a lot of the younger generation, baseball was huge when I was a kid. And if you go back a couple of generations, baseball was king. It became America's pastime, literally. The most popular sport in America, hasn't been for quite some time, and now in danger of losing their footing and traction to hockey that continues to grow in popularity, but yet is not where folks involved in professional hockey would love it to be. So I always try to cover these things through the context of what could this mean moving forward. Now, in a vacuum, Sunday morning was awesome. Just in a vacuum for a sporting event, outside of what we're going to try to do topically on the show today, the game itself was incredible, okay? But there's just something about hockey. There's something about the Olympics. Like, how many of you would get up at 5:45 Mountain Time to get ready to watch a game if it wasn't something other than this? What other event would motivate you to move things throughout your day to just get up at the crack of dawn? And if you're in Pacific time zone, you're getting up at 4:45 to get ready to watch a game. There's something about the Olympics. There's something about hockey specifically. And I don't know how much of this is the current climate of unrest, political unrest, both in America and the world, where people, it felt a little bit like 1980. And so many of these seminal moments were lining up with certain dates, like literally being the 46th anniversary to the day of when that 1980 Olympic hockey team created the miracle on ice that we all know about. Some birthdays lining up, some other dates lining up. And it felt like it was a moment where the Americans should be able to capitalize on all this kind of like cosmic type things coming together. Now, we've got to be clear, again, in a vacuum, Canada is player for player, and honestly is probably not even close as far as talent on paper. Canada's the best hockey team in the world, and they have been for decades and decades and decades. It's not new. There are moments like the first game a year ago in the Four Nations tournament where, the gloves drop right away and America's able to get that win, United States able to get that win. But a lot of people forget in the championship match, Canada still got the win. And this was the first time the U.S. beat Canada in a game that was deciding something for like a trophy or a medal since 1996. And historically speaking, Canada still has the advantage. And we have to say it out loud, they were the better side yesterday morning. They just were. 46-28 shots on goal. But ultimately, when it comes to a game like hockey, it is a little bit like soccer, where if you don't convert your chances, you're leaving it up to this one potential seminal moment that can allow the other team to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, which is what the Americans did yesterday. And I'll be honest, first of all, it's a very stressful watch. I don't know if you guys experienced this the same way. Certainly down the stretch when the game was tied and the Americans, they had a penalty called on them. I was stressed watching this game, and I was just sitting in my living room by myself, texting with some friends and texting with my brothers. Like, are you watching this? This is insane. Connor McDavid's the best hockey player in the world right now. Nathan McKinnon is one of the best. They've got Stanley Cup champions, Sam Bennett, Macklin Celebrini. I mean, talent for look, and the fact that Sidney Crosby did not play is a very important thing. Sidney Crosby is among the most decorated international Olympian hockey players in the history of the sport. So that there's something there as well. But Canada's inability to finish their very clear chances, McKinnon whiffing on a wide open net, a 5-on-3 that was only 90 seconds, but I don't know about you guys, that felt like 20 minutes to me. And you can't convert. You just leave it open for the moments, and the moments are what we watch for, okay, if we're honest about this stuff. Certainly with a game like this. In football or basketball, there are several moments throughout a game that's more or less up and down action. Obviously, football, there are stoppages in play, unlike basketball, where more or less you're up and down, unless it's a free throw fest. So sports like soccer, sports like hockey, that have just seminal moments, and maybe only 2 or 3 of them as far as being able to score an actual goal throughout the course of a game, there's an extra gravity to the moments of those sports. I think it's one of the reasons why I'm kind of drawn to them. I've always been a football and a basketball guy, but I've really learned to certainly appreciate the nuances and intricacies of soccer. And Hockey's a game that, as a result of being raised in the Northeast around the New York Rangers, I've always appreciated, but it's certainly not at the level when it comes to the interest, domestically of football and basketball. So back to what this means, okay? Back to what this could mean. A lot of people, as far as some of the historical conversations or think pieces that have been written over the past 24 hours, harken back to 1980. What did 1980 do for the growth of hockey domestically in America? A lot of people drawing a line between 1980 and this new generation of hockey players, even though none of them were even a twinkle in their parents' eye back then. Did 1980 garner enough interest in the sport where mom and dad want little Jimmy, or I guess I'll say little Jack Hughes? We're not going to put a football in his hand. We're not going to put a basketball in his hand. We're going to put skates on him because that was so awesome. How much of that is there? I don't know. I mean, it's a hypothetical conversation, and there's not a lot of ability to draw data as far as did mom and dad watch 1980 and they were so inspired they wanted to raise hockey players? Or is there a 4 or a 5-year-old out there right now that got up on Sunday morning with mom and dad to watch this game who has tremendous athletic potential and might decide, like, yeah, the football thing's not for me, not really into basketball. I want to learn to skate. I want to learn to play that game. Because the fact of the matter is this. There's still a gap between the United States hockey talent and Canadian hockey talent. There is. Now, USA got it done, and because they were an underdog and Canada has better talent and was thought to win, it's that little chip on the shoulder U.S. thing that we all love. But if you guys watch, those two teams play 10 times. How many times do the Americans win? I'll say 3, maybe 4. Now, for that moment, they got it done, period, end of story. But a tournament like this, with the U.S. getting it done over Canada in overtime, what can it do for the sport of hockey? What can it do for the league of the National Hockey League? I think that's going to be fascinating because as we sit here 46 years later, and we look back on 1980, and you didn't even have to be born then to know what happened because there have been movies made about it, and there's a documentary every other year, and Mike Eruzione never had to work a day in his life because he's like, I'll just do another doc or maybe an interview. So as we look back on that 46 years later and maybe be able to draw a line between that day and the improvement of the talent pool of American hockey players, what will we look back on this and say 40 years down the line? If we're still around, have you paid attention to AI? A non sequitur, but like that seems to be a little bit of an issue. But if we operate off the premise that we're still a republic and a society in 46 years, what will this day mean? That to me is the most fascinating portion of it. But in a vacuum, just an awesome moment, man. As the U.S. men, as a result of an overtime goal from Jack Hughes, who had his teeth knocked out earlier in the game by Sam Bennett, are your gold medal champs. All right, we'll get back to this. Nick Olachek is going to join us, but an old friend, Sarah Todd, makes her triumphant return to the drive coming up on the other side on ESPN 700. For the first time in 46 years, the men's hockey gold medal resides in the United States. The Utah Mammoth are back at it coming up. Fun time for the game of hockey. So let's bring in one of our favorites to break it all down. Broadcaster from the Utah Mammoth. Lifelong hockey, well, not just fan, it's ingrained in his DNA. Nick Olczyk back on the drive. What's up, Nick? Happy Monday, man. How are you?
Spencer, it is great to be with you. It is, I've been doing a lot of thinking about the magnitude of the United States' win at the Olympics in both men's and women's ice hockey. And I'm such a proud American. I love this country. But I think for as proud as we should always be to live here and to call this amazing place our home, what a day to remind us of how truly great we are, and the display that the players put on, the celebration, the aftermath, to now say that we are the best on the planet right now. I think that is an amazing feather in the cap of everybody, young, old, has represented the United States or has been a fan of the on-ice product. This is a moment, this is a time where everybody should feel even more proud, just as so many of us are on a day-to-day basis, to be able to call this great place our home.
Well said, and part of me doesn't even want to ask you a question and just allow you to talk like that for the next 20 minutes, but I will try to insert myself in this. Like you, I have a father who was, a guiding light for me to get into sports, playing, and then, ultimately working in it, now being on the media side of things. And I would imagine the text message exchange that you and your father had at some point.
Oh, yeah.
I would love it if you're comfortable, if you would kind of share what those messages were back and forth.
Yeah. To paraphrase, I just, I told him how proud I am of him.
Yeah.
And I am so lucky and so fortunate to have the greatest support system that is my family. My mom, my dad, my brothers, my sister, extended family. I grew up extremely blessed to be surrounded by so much love, and my parents telling me how much they love me and how much they're proud of me, of the things I've done. And yeah, I've gotten some butt kickings in the past. I'm not going to deny that. I think that the tough love and the discipline is also a huge part of it. But the one thing I love so much about my parents and my dad is that they have never shied away from letting me know how proud they are of me, and I am a byproduct of them in every sense. And so I thought, what more fitting thing to say than to tell my dad how proud I am of him and the work he did all tournament, but I think in even a larger picture, Spencer, of my dad was a 17-year-old young man who played on the 1984 Olympic team. And for those that don't know, that was the team that had the pressure of following in the footsteps of the 1980 Miracle team, who defeated the Russians and ended up winning a gold medal back in 1980. And so they had the unbelievable responsibility and hope of trying to follow it up with another gold medal. They came short that year, but whether it was playing in the Olympics as a 17-year-old, as my dad did, or representing the United States on other international stages, whether it be Canada Cups, as he had done on 3 different occasions, of all the places my dad played in the NHL, like, my favorite pictures and videos are of him when he was donning the red, white, and blue, because I know how much that meant to him. And back then, back in the 70s and 80s, USA hockey was growing, but it really wasn't a blip on the map before the 1980 Olympic team. Yes, you had great American-born players in the National Hockey League, but that was really the team that put them on the map. And so, the pride that my dad has to have not only worn the jersey on a multitude of occasions, but to be able to be part of that game. And anybody who was listening to the broadcast, especially in the celebration part of the show, when USA had won and my dad, he got emotional. I mean, like, it came flooding out of him of how proud he is and has always been of what USA Hockey has meant to him, has meant to our family. And so no greater honor than for any former Olympian or anybody that has worn the jersey that has USA on the front of it. No more happier day than the other day when the USA beat the Canadians.
For our listeners' reference, Nick's father is Eddie, who is just a legend and a Stanley Cup winner with my New York Rangers. And I know that's not how he's best known throughout the course of his career, but that's how I got to know him. So, I think that's really cool, man. I was actually thinking about you when I was watching him on the broadcast because he just did such a dynamite job. And let's get to the actual game. So you're the expert. I will cede to you. I don't remember the last time I've been that nervous. And at the end of the third period, Nick, I'll just tell you what I was feeling. Holy smokes, I can't believe we survived. And holy smokes, we have no shot in 3-on-3. How did we get this done? Just walk me through it.
Well, Spencer, I mean, that let's just start with the 3-on-3. I mean, there's other things we can go to, but I mean, like, that's the beauty of 3-on-3 is that you really never know. You might not think you got a shot, but all of a sudden, one of the better players, and of course they're all better players on both of these two teams, gets the chance, they miss, and then all it is somebody slips, somebody falls, there's a mental error or a big save by a goalie with guys caught up the ice, and then you can get an odd man rush the other way, which is exactly what happened for the Americans when Jack Hughes was able to score that unbelievable goal. But when I think about that game and further think about the aftermath of it, look, Connor McDavid is the best player in the world. That is not even up for debate. Nathan McKinnon is very close, but I still rank Connor McDavid ahead of him. So I say this with all due respect. I don't know how the tournament MVP does not go to Connor Hellebuck, the netminder for Team USA, for what he did all tournament and for the fact that he showed up in the biggest way, in the biggest game, on the brightest stage. Connor Hellebuck has had a couple of tough years in terms of producing when it matters. In the playoffs for the Winnipeg Jets, look, this guy's won 3 Vezina trophies, which is the goalie of the year. He won the Hart Trophy for the league's MVP last season. So he's got all the hardware, but he just hasn't been able to get over the hump in the playoffs with the Winnipeg Jets. And so there were question marks coming into this tournament. Connor Hellebuck was going to start as the starting goaltender, but when this tournament ends, was he going to still be the guy in the net at the biggest moment? And so we found out and we learned very quickly what an amazing goaltender he is first and foremost. How about that save he made with the paddle of his stick to deny a wide open Devon Taves right in the slot? Like, that to me, not just save of the Olympics. That is save of the century type of stuff in all of hockey that's been played, because that kept the game tied 1-1 amidst all the other unbelievable saves that he made, and including in overtime too. So, that game, you need to rely on your goaltender. And for some of our newer hockey fans or newer listeners, that's the beauty about this game, about just getting in the tournament, getting into the dance, getting into the playoffs. If you've got a hot goalie, even if you've got some of the best players in the world on the other side, sometimes that hot goalie can carry you to the promised land. That's the beauty about the game of hockey. And Connor Hellebuck was locked in. He was all over it from the start. And so I think as big of a reason as any, the Matt Boldy goal was a beauty, how he just kind of chipped it to himself, split through a couple of Canadian defenders, and then hit it out of midair to maintain possession and then beat Jordan Binnington. That was an amazing goal. Of course, the OTGWG to win the gold medal by Jack Hughes, and what a tournament he had as well. But if I'm looking to spotlight one person, and it's never about one person, I get that. But USA does not call them gold medalists if it wasn't for Connor Hellebuck. And I am thrilled for him, because this was his moment to silence all of the critics that say, he's great in the regular season, but he's not a big moment guy. This certainly solidified him as a guy who can get it done in the biggest moments.
From a local angle, Nick, of course, young Clayton Keller didn't see a ton of ice time throughout the course of the tournament, but I would imagine he will come back to Utah with quite an experience. Just having been on the team, and now he can call himself a gold winner. What do you make of that? Even though he wasn't necessarily a featured piece, a piece of the team nonetheless. How can Clayton learn from this experience?
Well, I mean, it'll have been a moment that he's dreamt about. And for those that don't know, Clayton Keller has represented the United States at other levels, amateur levels, since he was 16. So it's not as if this is just all, he made the team and whatnot. I mean, he has given years of blood, sweat, and tears to the red, white, and blue. When he was playing at the National Team Development Program in Ann Arbor, Michigan, playing in the World Juniors. And what he also did last summer is he helped lead the United States to their first World Championship win in 92 years. So this guy now is not only the captain of the Mammoth, but he's got 2 gold medals to be able to show the fact that he can play a role on Team USA, no matter the tournament, no matter the role that he's put in. And now at the World Championships last summer, the NHL playoffs were still going on at that time, so they didn't have the full complement, and Clayton Keller played a huge role with a guy like Katach Thompson, who ended up scoring the winning goal to grant the United States the World Championship win. And so he was it was a different role there, more trusted to produce offense. But I can tell you this from knowing Clayton a little bit, being around him, having a chance to talk to him a bit at the arena, he was so proud to wear that jersey and to be on that team. And that's the great thing about sports in general, especially at that level at the Olympics. You check your ego at the door. And I think what I love most about hockey is it's we, not me, but especially in a hockey locker room, Spencer, if there is a hint, a stench of selfishness, you are weeded out very quickly. And so when it is best on best, when you are joining a team where everybody's the best player on their team, you have to adapt your role. And I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. Now, look, yes, Clayton Keller would have loved to have played 20 minutes and have been on the first line or whatever, but I give him so much credit for doing 2 things, which is what's necessary for a hockey team to be successful. And that's everybody has a role, and you got to do 2 things. You have to accept your role, whatever the case may be, and you have to go out and execute on it at the highest level you can. So whether it was 1 shift or 100 shifts, he played a role on that team. He gets to call himself a gold medalist at the Olympics and partook in, played a big role in the first gold medal in USA Olympic history in 46 years. That's special. And lastly, most importantly, for him to be able to share that with his family, with his mom, with his brother, considering the untimely and awful tragedy of him losing his father earlier this season, there is no doubt that Mr. Keller was there in spirit. And so an emotional time for the family, no doubt. But all of Utah, all of Mammoth Nation, all of us really couldn't be prouder of Clayton Keller.
Well said. So I don't know if you noticed during the medal ceremony, the Canadians did not look, how shall I say, pumped to be receiving their silver medals. And I don't blame them, right? Like, I've got a brother-in-law and a sister-in-law who are Canadians, and my brother-in-law was a hockey player. He was the captain of the BYU hockey team. They love their hockey. It is their national game. They're awesome at it, and that's not going to stop. How do you think they respond 4 years from now, French Alps? Yeah. What do you think the Canadians do to make sure they get this thing back on their side?
Well, I think it won't be that different from what we saw the United States' response at the Four Nations face-off, Spencer.
Yeah.
I mean, how unbelievable of an appetizer was the Four Nations that really, I thought, reignited what we all knew. We want best on best at the Olympics and the World Cups and the Four Nations face-off. That's the best. This last 2 weeks was some of the best hockey you will ever see, because we've got the best of the best taking on one another. So how's the response going to be? Well, I think the response is going to be that they're going to want to come and kick our butts. I mean, look, that's what makes the United States and Canadian rivalry so special, is that it's our time now to go out and not only prove, as we did as a country, as those guys did over in Milan, prove that right now the United States has the best hockey team in the world. You could sit there and say that, oh, well, you didn't think the better team won, or because Canada had more shots on goal or more chances, more expected goals, more slot shots. The last time I checked, the scoreboard read 2-1 United States.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter how you get it done, they don't ask how. They ask how many gold medals you have. And so, yes, I would expect a big response from the Canadian players, from Hockey Canada, no doubt. But for right now, the United States should be enjoying this in a huge way. And I can't wait for the next Olympics. I can't wait for the next international tournament, because while so many of these players dreamt as young kids to play in the National Hockey League, it has also been a dream for so many of them, especially those in Europe, to don their country's colors, because really, truly, there is no bigger honor. And I will say, too, historically, Spencer, the United States has not always been Canada's biggest rival. They have always been our biggest rival, but now there is no doubt that there is no better rivalry in international hockey than ourselves, the United States, and those north of the border.
A lot of people, and Nick Olczyk's our guest. We'll get to the Mammoth in a little bit, but of course we're leaning into the massive topic in pretty much any sports ecosystem and media as the U.S. men on the hockey side of things were able to bring home the gold medal for the first time in 46 years. And Nick, it's interesting listening to a lot of people and reading a lot of think pieces that have been written, drawing a line from the 1980 team. And what did that moment mean for this sport in this country? And look, none of these kids were even born then.
Yeah,
but when we look back on this in a few decades, what do you think this moment could mean for the growth of the game and the growth of the league and the sport here domestically?
Yeah, I hope it sparks yet another exponential explosion of interest in hockey. And, you know, my dad speaks glowingly about, you know, when he was watching the likes of Mike Eruzione and Jack O'Callahan and Jim Craig, who were some of the most important players on that 1980 Miracle team. And to see Mike Eruzione on the NBC broadcast over in Milan, to then see Dylan Larkin with Eruzione up on his shoulders at a bar, like a bad day to be a beer in Milan after the United States won the gold medal, and just to see how much that team rallied around guys that, you're right, a lot of these guys weren't even born back in 1980. So to be able to now connect the past with the present, I think it is only going to do wonders for the future, because one day the future will be the present, and a lot of those kids will look back and say, you know what inspired me is that unbelievable individual effort that Matt Boldy made. Or that was the greatest save I've ever seen was Connor Hellebuck denying Devon Taves right in front of the net with the paddle of his stick. And I tried to emulate that in my basement. And I want to be a goalie now. And then you never know. That young kid who saw that game today, he's 8 years old, and he could go on to be the next great goaltender if he gets drafted in the National Hockey League. So it is so special to be able to see something and then want to emulate it, and hopefully one day be able to replicate it, because the pull, the emotional intimacy that is sports that can drive people to do amazing things, to me, that's what's so special about our game, and I don't think that things could have played out any better when you think about the close game, of course, it going to overtime as well. But this should continue to grow the game in the greatest country in the world. And right now we can say with our chests out and our heads held high that the United States is the very best. And so I'm sure whether you're 80 years old or you're 8 years old, if you watch that game, you are now a hockey fan. And hopefully if you play or you want to play, this could be a real springboard to hopefully some young kids that were tuning in, being able to don the red, white, and blue and call themselves gold medalists one day. In the day and age of aggregators and folks that take partial quotes, then post them online without context, I don't like the visceral reaction of such things. So I will get into the comments that John Cooper made, but we should be very clear that there was a comprehensive soundbite when he was asked about overtime and 3-on-3
and if you like the format. So I'll just read what John said, and then I'm going to let you help us understand what this means. He said, quote, well, you take 4 players off the ice. Now hockey's not hockey anymore. There's a reason overtime and shootouts are in play. It's all TV-driven to end games, so it's not a long time. There's a reason why 3-on-3 is not in the Stanley Cup Finals or the playoffs. Now, all the teams know the rules going into these beforehand, so you can't come up here and say we're the losing team because we lost in a 3-on-3, and that's not fair. I'm not saying that. We knew the rules coming in. We won a game in this tournament, 3-on-3, so that's not why we lost. Most people are just painting him as a complainer, but I thought it was a pretty comprehensive response to a fair question. Yeah. Nick, what do you think?
Spencer, I'm very, very, very glad, and I'm not just saying this because you've always been a gracious host to have me on, but you're doing what more people need to do, and that's providing the full context. I mean, that's journalistic integrity at its finest. So kudos to you for that.
Thanks,
and for
man.
Giving me a platform as opposed to just give me the first 5 sentences. Look, if Canada would have won that game, obviously they wouldn't have been talking about that. Like for me, when I look at the Olympic tournament, I would love to have 5-on-5 in overtime. Because to me, when I think of overtime and I think of 5-on-5, I think of the biggest moments. I do think of the Stanley Cup playoffs, no doubt. But the other thing you have to keep in mind is, well, at the Olympics, there were 2 arenas, and you're trying to play 2 and 3 games a day. So you can't have a game at 5-on-5 continuous overtime, go into 4 overtimes because you got games that you have to play later on that day alongside the maintenance of the ice. So playing 3-on-3 of 10 minutes, trying to push these games along, I totally understand that. But I do wish that to have the specialness, the importance of going to 5-on-5 in a gold medal overtime game. Like, honestly, I'm so thrilled. And if you can't take my word for it, just listen to my tone. Like, I'm the team that I love won, no doubt. But I do think that down the line in the future, if there is a way to have the gold medal game changed to 5-on-5 overtime continuous, I'm on board for that. I really am. I think that would lead to an even better brand of hockey. But 3-on-3, it was one of the most exciting things that the National Hockey League, I think, ever did. And some people don't like the shootout. I'm not the biggest fan of the shootout, so I wouldn't be surprised if at some point in the future, though most overtime games do end within the first 5 minutes in the NHL, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they tack on another 10 minutes next CBA in a couple of years and just go 10 minutes. So that way, I mean, those shootout numbers would go way down. I know that is an exciting element of the game, but 3-on-3 to me, it's special, it's exhilarating because one save, one missed shot, one guy falling is going to lead to a 2-on-1 or a 2-on-0 or a 3-on-1 all the way back the other way. So I know exactly where John Cooper is coming from, and those that don't know, he is arguably the best and most successful coach in the league, in the world right now. So I know where he's coming from, but I do think the follow-up there was important from him in terms of understanding that, yeah, everybody knew the rules. That's the way that it goes. But to me, there's just nothing, Spencer. There's nothing like playoff hockey, 5-on-5 in overtime, and not knowing whether it's going to end in the first 50 seconds or whether you're going to go to 5 overtimes and you're going to be sitting on your couch at 3 in the morning just begging for a goal to go in so you can go to bed. But to me, that's the other part of it. And who knows, maybe down the line the Olympic Committee ends up making that adjustment. But at the end of the day, the best team won, and we all couldn't be happier for it.
Before we get to the Mammoth, that'll be our final thing before I say you lose, Nick. I did want to underscore one thing that I think is under-talked about. Now, you referenced it earlier, but, the game-winning goal from Jack Hughes and Hellebuck standing on his head is the storyline. But that Matt Boldy goal, I think that's going to be lost in, like, the ethos of what the bigger clickbait moments are going to be like. And I just want to know from you, because I look like a baby giraffe on skates. I've never played hockey before. So when he scored, I'm like, wait, how did he beat those 2 defenders? And then they showed the replay, and it blew my mind. Like, take us through that sequence before I get some Mammoth stuff from you, Nick, will you?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one thing that actually my dad, who was on the broadcast, that was one thing that he had actually seen in real time. And so before the replay even hit, he mentioned, hey, watch how Boldy not only pushes this puck in front of him to kind of separate himself from the puck to allow himself to skate a little bit faster, but then he hits it out of midair and puts it in a position where he can skate into it. Like, to me, and then to have the wherewithal of going at full speed to go forehand, backhand, and it looked to me like he was trying to go 5-hole, but Binnington had overslid so much that he ended up putting it past the pad. An even more difficult shot to make when I'm sure he was going well over 20 or 21 miles an hour. But as a player, most players in this league, Spencer, or most players that play hockey in general, no matter the level or age, when the puck is on your stick, you're more apt to slow down your feet because you're worried about stick handling the puck, controlling it, trying to get it on either your forehand or your backhand, and then make a play. Very few players, only the elite of the elite, actually get faster when the puck is on their stick. I think about a guy like Patrick Kane, who's been doing it for so long. Of course, Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon, where they have an amazing ability to get faster when the puck is on their stick because their hands can keep up with their feet. And they're going a million miles an hour. And Matt Boldy is another one of those kind of guys where he had saw, like a running back, that there was a hole to get into. But if I keep the puck out to the side of my body, I'm not going to be able to get through that hole. Like a running back, if you're carrying the ball out to your side, it's going to get knocked away. So you got to put it in front of you and hold on to that baby as hard as you can. But in that same vein, Boldy just kind of poked it through both of those defensemen and then made that unbelievable hand-eye play to knock it out of midair, keep it in front of him, and then separate between both those guys. And he just blew by him. And then the finish, like, to get through him was hard enough. And then to get past Jordan Binnington with the puck was equally as spectacular. So I would agree. I think that's, of all the highlights in the game, that should certainly be something that does not get missed talking about.
All right, final thing, Nick. We'll say you lose 25 games left for the Mammoth and most teams, right? I know. I mean, with all this stuff, we blink and it's almost over. And
right.
They were on fire between Christmas and the Olympic break. We'll get Cooley back, right? I think he's ready to roll. So just give us a quick preview. Final 25 games left of the season. What do you expect? And are we going to see a little Stanley Cup playoff action in Salt Lake City this year?
Oh boy, Spencer. I mean, this Mammoth team have put themselves in a hell of a spot to be able to make the playoffs. There's no question. 64 points right now. 4 up on the next closest team that is trying to get into a playoff spot. The second wild card currently is at 63, and then a couple of the teams on the outside looking in are at 60. Now, yes, some of those teams do have games in hand, but with how the Mammoth have played, Spencer, especially on home ice, that to me has been the biggest thing. And there was a time not too long ago where the Mammoth had played the most road games and the fewest home games. The majority of their schedule the rest of the way, aside from this 5-game road trip to start March, they're going to be playing the majority of their games at home. And they've won 17 of the 27 games on home ice this year at the Delta Center. I mean, when Mammoth Nation gets going, it is not only a type of building that gives the Mammoth players another gear, but it is intimidating to play for the opponents because of the noise that's going on. No matter what happens, a hit, a block shot, a fight, a goal, a big penalty kill, whatever the case may be. But yes, getting healthy, that's going to be a crucial part for this team moving forward. I've been at practice the last couple of days. Logan Cooley is looking really good. He's looking ready. I'm not sure if he's going to be in the first game back on Wednesday against the Colorado Avalanche at home. But nonetheless, he is out of the non-contact jersey, as is Alexander Kerfoot, who is going to bring some vital depth to this forward group. And I think, too, for Peterka, for Mata, for Vejmelka, and for Keller, great for those guys to be able to go participate in the Olympics. But I think this break is going to be great a lot as well for some of the guys that, a lot of the guys that didn't go and play, because it's a break to be able to rest the body, because the condensed schedule this year, it has been a grind for a lot of these players, as many of them have told me. So, look, these guys won't have played a competitive game in 3 weeks. So there will be some of the most sloppy play on Wednesday around the entire league as these guys try to, in a way, learn how to play hockey again, get their timing back, get the reactions back, get the cardio back to where it needs to be. But with 25 games to go, as of right now, this team has done their job. They put themselves in a great position. Now they got to go out and find a way to maintain their consistent play. You can't go on downward spirals. You can't lose 3 in a row. You can't lose 5 in a row. You lose 1, you lose 2. You got to find a way to get back up on the horse because this is going to be a playoff race that goes all the way down to game 82.
Nick, great stuff, man. I appreciate you hanging in there for some extended time today, but today's the day to extend the time to talk about this sport, So best of luck the rest of the way. Be good. We'll chat soon, okay?
Nothing more I'd rather do, Spencer. Great to be with you. Thanks as always. Keep up the great work. And how about a little USA? USA!
There we go.
USA!
Love it. Love it, Nick. Be good, man, okay?
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, Nick Olczyk, his dad was a hell of a player, and Nick was a really good player. He had some injury issues in college. But Eddie Olczyk was a Ranger when they hoisted Lord Stanley's Cup in 1994. One of the coolest things I've ever experienced was that New York Rangers parade and the ticker tape parade, the Canyon of Heroes in downtown New York City. It'd be really cool to see that happen here in Salt Lake. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later. A lot of people around here, I think, I can't speak for everybody, but I feel like the sentiment among basketball fans is the modern day and age of the NBA and some of the, the way that the league has gone over the past little bit, player empowerment, players being able to choose where they want to play and oftentimes force the hands of teams to trade them. Is it even possible for a team in Salt Lake City to win a championship in pro basketball? I think it's a fair question. I can tell you it's very possible to build a NHL team that could, win the Stanley Cup for several different reasons. Some are very, very obvious if you just live here and look around, and I'll leave that there. But we'll get to that coming up in just a little bit. But good stuff from Nick today. I'm going to bring in Sarah Todd. We also have Kevin Reynolds on the show, who's the newest beat writer covering the Utah Jazz from the Salt Lake Tribune. Kurt Schmidt for a little RSL later on. We got a busy Monday show, and it's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. For the first time in 46 years, the gold medal for I should say Olympic hockey on the men's side and the women's side, 2 for 2, but the women have won it before. Quite a bit, actually. Kind of like soccer. Our women's soccer team has been really good for a long time, and our men just kind of suck. Women's hockey team has been awesome for a while, and our men are now getting better. But for the first time in 46 years, the gold medal lives in the United States. A historic day yesterday. Really good stuff from Nick Olachek earlier, who's on the Mammoth broadcast team. And his father, Eddie, was a legend and a really good player and an awesome broadcaster, by the way. Wrote a book about his battle with cancer, by the way. He had stage 3 colon cancer, diagnosed about 3-4 years ago, and he's in remission. He's back on the broadcast. He was on the broadcast yesterday morning, and it was awesome. I thought it was just really cool. They had Mike Eruzione stop by during one of the intermissions. Mike Tirico must have a tremendous amount of energy. I'm not sure how that dude does his job. But good stuff. I thought it was really, really cool. And interesting, we're going to bring Sarah Todd in here for a moment. Porter, let me bring you in on this. You're a football guy, first and foremost. But if you're not a football guy, you're somewhat still of a basketball guy. Is that fair to say?
Somewhat. Fair.
Has it?
I'm a hoops head.
Has your interest soured a tad bit on the regular season NBA product?
100%. I mean, if you've listened to the show in the last several months, you understand this for me. And part of it, listen, like I can still tune into a game and enjoy watching some of the best basketball players in the world compete and, go out and show off their talent. But it feels like there are, I want to say 50 plus games before we really get serious about basketball, right? And
maybe more,
And because of the way that half of the league is angling for the draft and half of the league is angling for the playoffs, there really isn't a lot of intrigue on any given night. Now, every once in a while, you get a really good matchup. You get a really good mix of teams and players that create some intrigue on that given game. But yeah, man, it feels like a lot of basketball that is kind of just guys clocking in and out at their workday, which to me is never why I watched NBA basketball. And I feel like it is not necessarily entirely new, but it is moving further and further in that direction. And I got to be honest with you, it feels like that timeline has only increased since Mr. Silver was in charge of the league. And instead of going towards solutions that try to make more competitive basketball, I feel like the league is going in the direction of how can we make this more commercialized and tech savvy, and how can we fit another sponsor in? How can we gimmicks, right? A lot of gimmicks that are being thrown into it that don't help in my estimation. So yeah, I mean, I've soured on regular season hoops a little bit. That being said, the second that we get into the final few weeks of the regular season, when seeding really comes into play, and then of course into postseason, I'm locked in because this still is the best league in the world as far as hoops talent is concerned. And once those guys really strap it up and try to go out and win a title, there's not much better in the sports world. But yeah, I do think the league has an issue as far as trying to get folks to tune in for what is currently an 82-game regular season.
So I referenced the Gallup poll that was taken last year, and we talked about this. I think it was either Pablo or Jason, because we were talking about it through the prism of the growth of soccer with the World Cup about to converge upon our region, which is the biggest sporting event in the world, and it's not even close. Like here domestic, it's like, hey, the Super Bowl is okay. Like World Cup is the Super Bowl times 10. The Super Bowl is our biggest event, but the World Cup is the world's biggest event, dwarfing even the Olympics. So the Gallup poll, and this is 2025, so this was last year. This is fans' self-declared favorite sport. Okay, so fourth quarter of last year. Here are your percentage breakdowns. 36% of Americans cite American football as their favorite sport. 17% of Americans cite basketball as their favorite sport. And for the first time since they started taking these Gallup polls, trying to figure out what the most popular sport in America is. Soccer is now third, with 10% of Americans saying soccer is their favorite sport. Baseball is fourth, 9%, and hockey is fifth, only 4%, just ahead of tennis, boxing, MMA, and golf. Golf has actually climbed a little bit, but hockey still is firmly fifth in America. Now, I bring up the year and a quarter because ultimately I think it's going to be interesting to see what this moment of the men grabbing Olympic gold could mean for the growth of both the sport and the National Hockey League. Now, regionally, right, it's always interesting to consider this. So football has been the most popular sport in America since 1972. There was a head-to-head battle between football and basketball in the 90s after the 92 Dream Team and a guy named Michael Jordan captivating everybody's attention. And during some cycles, the percentages were somewhat close, but football, for the most part, has been the most popular sport in this country since 1972, according to these Gallup polls. And now the gap is as wide as it's ever been, and it's not closing anytime soon. For several different reasons, as we've talked about, football figured out gambling far before everybody was in bed with a sports book. And now everybody is. Literally. It was kind of refreshing during the Olympics to watch an event without being slapped across the face about live odds. And now Canada is now favored by 53%. So if you put $20 down, you have a chance to win 62 or whatever the hell. It's kind of nice to watch the Olympics and not be hit over the head with that. But prior to 1972, the most popular sport in America was baseball. And I think there are several reasons for baseball's demise. But again, back to the regionality stuff, there are still places and footprints across the landscape of our country where people love baseball and people watch baseball and people attend baseball games. And regional television rights, live TV rights, still very lucrative and valuable. And I so am on board. And by the way, our guy Chris Camerani, sent me a piece about baseball coming to Salt Lake that the Athletic did New York Times via the Athletic. And I'm cheering so hard for the Miller Sports and Entertainment Group to grab this baseball team because I think it just would be awesome. I think we're ready for it. I think the market's ready for it. But as of now, according to the data, we do have two of the three most popular sports in America, basketball and soccer. Will we ever get American football? I hesitate never to say never with the growth of our sport, or growth of our state, I should say, both simply just population and then a very stable economy, at least for now. So who knows? Maybe a few years down the line, maybe the NFL looks to Salt Lake, which would be an amazing thing. But for now, we are a basketball city. We are a soccer city. And of course, we are a college football community. There's no doubt about that. But when it comes to roster construction in pro basketball, juxtaposed to roster construction in the NHL, and certainly factors beyond just building your team with great coaches, great players, good front office people. You always want to bet on good people, whether it's, ownership, front office, coaching. You want to make sure that you can do the best you can to make sure everybody's in the right seat on the bus, if I want to use that corny analogy. But if you can't get the best players in the world, you have no chance at ultimately winning a championship. You have no chance at winning a championship. And I can't speak, nor would I pretend to speak, for the entire pro basketball community here in Salt Lake and long-suffering Jazz fans who have just simply wanted a team that has a chance to compete for the thing that, if we're honest, we haven't had since 1998. I mean, if you really look at it, we haven't had a team here in Utah getting close to 30 years that has been close to winning a championship. We haven't. The Booz D. Will teams were good. Memo, those guys, AK, that's a good team. They weren't close. Mitchell, Gobert, Ingles, Conley, Quinn, Dennis, good teams. Most regular season wins. No one's hanging a banner for that. They couldn't get past the second round. D. Will Booz went to the Western Conference Finals once. It was a little bit of a serendipitous path that got them there. They weren't winning a championship. It hasn't been since John and Carl. And we're about to end the 4th straight season of the most putrid professional basketball that's ever been played in Utah for 4 straight years. Under new ownership, new front office, new coaching, new players. 4 straight years. You haven't been good at this. You have been horrible at this, if we're honest. Could it change on a dime next year? Maybe. I like some of the things they've done. I think Austin's smart. I think Will's a good coach. There's some things to hope for. But if you ask yourself honestly, as a Jazz fan, do I believe the Utah Jazz can win an NBA championship in this modern era of pro basketball? What do you say? What comes to mind when I simply just ask that question? Can the Jazz win a championship? Do you have faith that in this NBA ecosystem where players no longer even wait until they're free agents, by the way, to force their hand out of a city? And we know this with Donovan, right? Like, once upon a time, contracts did matter. One of the most under-talked about dynamics of NBA basketball is what Kawhi Leonard did to the Spurs. It really was the first time that had happened. And quick history lesson, there have been holdouts in the NBA before, dating all the way back to the 50s and 60s, when free agency was, before it was even a thing. There have been players that have been unhappy with their contracts and have refused to show up day one, but the money is so stupid now. Like back then, even the highest paid guys couldn't afford to not show up for work for too long. They actually needed the money. What a novel concept. People having to show up for work because they actually need to get paid so they can support their families. But as obviously the ecosystem has changed and revenue streams are all over the place and live TV rights are in the billions and tens of billions of dollars. And once guaranteed contracts became a reality, a lot of people were nervous, right? Because look, ask yourself the question. If I got paid $25 million a year, whether or not I showed up to do this show every day, you might find your boy on a golf course occasionally instead of grinding in the afternoons. Okay, so I'm not casting judgment here. When guaranteed contracts became a reality, there was a permeating fear throughout the people that loved the way the NBA was set up. And yes, when it comes to revenue sharing, the players deserve the bulk of it. That's who we watch. And prior to the players getting what they deserved, it was a bunch of rich old white dudes making a bunch of money and not giving the players their fair piece of the share, okay? So I'm all for those changes, but what it certainly has led to is a different era of NBA basketball than it was when John and Carl were here and the Jazz actually were championship contenders. So what Kawhi Leonard did to the Spurs, real quick, he threatened to not show up to play for them unless they traded him. And Popovich called his bluff and said, all right, don't show up. You won't get paid. But in this day and age where the money's so stupid, even if you're being paid $40, $50 million a year, you don't need it. Once upon a time, the players needed it. Okay, hold out. Go ahead. It's fine. You're going to be back in a month because you have a mortgage and you have a family. And now it's like, dude, I don't ever have to work again if I don't want to. And by the way, I'm a brand off the floor. I have sponsors that have my back. I've got a shoe deal here. I've got a social account of millions of followers. I can monetize that. I don't need your money. I don't want to play for you, so you need to trade me. And what Kawhi did, even though Pop called his bluff, is he sat all year. And that put the fear of God in people. Because what it's led to, once upon a time, it's like, no, we have Donovan here for another 5 years. He's under contract. Donovan's here for another 4 years. He can be upset, but he's ours. Those days are gone. If a player doesn't want to play for you, he's going to find a way to force your hand. So the reality of the thing is these guys have become mercenaries, changing teams every year. And for a city like Salt Lake and for a state like Utah, where, when's the last time, just ask yourself, when's the last time you turned on an NBA radio show or fired up NBA Today on ESPN and Malik Andrews was like, breaking news, Kevin Durant wants to play for the Jazz? Have you ever heard that before? Right? Like, who is it? Even whenever a player is traded to when Jaren Jackson Jr. was traded to the Jazz, there were a ton of videos going around social media and podcast clips going around social media, former players basically feeling bad for Jaren Jackson Jr. that he now lives here. Okay, we all know the deal. Even if people want to provide smoke screens about, and look, I live here. I love Salt Lake. I will stand up for Salt Lake all day. But I am not a 25-year-old awesome basketball player who's also a black man. And that's the reality of it. It's the economy of our city and our state. It's just simply the amount of people who live in Salt Lake and Utah. I think at last check, you have 2.7% of Salt Lake City African American. And you just want to live around people, right, that you're familiar with, that understand your culture and make you feel comfortable. I totally understand that. But when it comes to trying to build a really good basketball team, and then the complication also becomes this, because of the way the Jazz are mocked around the NBA. I mean, as I've said before, I'll say it again. The Jazz couldn't even keep the white guy who wanted to go home and play video games after he was done playing Jazz games. Like, it's not just about, African-American people wanting to live here or a black man choosing to live in Utah and wanting to stay here. There's something about the way Utah and Salt Lake City is viewed around the NBA that makes it uncool to play basketball here. That's just the way it is. And so whether it's Gordon Hayward or Donovan Mitchell being drafted and developed by the Utah Jazz, it became pretty clear that they wanted to sit at a different lunch table. It wasn't about playing for a different coach. Quinn was awesome. It wasn't about not wanting to potentially win NBA games. The Jazz were building something pretty cool with both iterations of teams when Hayward and Mitchell were here. It was about wanting to sit with the cool kids at a different lunch table. So Hayward takes off, wants to play for his college coach, and plays in Boston, which is a top 5-6 media market in the NBA. He is instantly a different level of celebrity when he trades Salt Lake for Boston. Mitchell has 3 years left on his deal and then just demands that he's traded. And by the way, told the Jazz that he wanted New York, wanted LA, wanted Miami, and Danny was like, you get Cleveland. But have you noticed what's happened in Cleveland? First of all, the Knicks, where Donovan wants to end up, grab Jalen Brunson, who's really good, and have some other players, now Mikal Bridges and Josh Hart. Hart's more of a forward, but Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Brunson don't work together, okay? So after, I always chuckle at this. After the Knicks signed Brunson, Mitchell's like, oh, Cleveland for life, baby. And signs a 3-year deal with Cleveland with what? A player option in the 3rd year. Brooklyn had gone all in to rebuild. The Knicks had signed Jalen Brunson, and suddenly Donovan was all about Cleveland. You know what he's not about anymore? Cleveland. Have you heard? Because he wants to play somewhere else. He wants to be where the cool kids are, okay? And most of these guys do. That's why you see them make these decisions about living in certain cities and playing with certain teammates. And you have belief that a few of them at some point are going to choose Salt Lake. That's what this comes down to. It's a long way of me saying it does feel like, at least in my echo chamber, Jazz fans who I know have soured on the Jazz and soured on the product, not just because the Jazz have been incompetent for 4 years and unserious for 4 years, but because of the way the NBA is set up. It's their belief that it's now no longer a possibility where a team in Salt Lake City, Utah, can win an NBA championship. But I'll tell you who can win an NBA, or I could tell you who can win a championship in Salt Lake City. It's certainly the Utah Mammoth. It's certainly a team in the NHL ecosystem for several of the scenarios that I just laid out, and how, simply put, because of the makeup of our state and city, and you can feel a certain way about that if you want, but stop me when I'm lying, it seems like it's an easier endeavor to build a hockey team that at some point can compete for the sport's biggest prize. All right, before we catch a break, new client on the show. I was telling Porter this the other night, just fired up the old cast iron, grilled up a nice New York steak from our friends at Wasatch Wagyu. It was awesome. Okay, so Wasatch Wagyu, new client on the show. Here's the bottom line. They're giving you 25% off all of their meat, okay? It's an excellent deal. It makes it very affordable. Initially, you're getting 10% off. Now you're getting 25% off your order. Okay. My favorite is their New York strips, but they have tomahawks, they've got fillets, they've got brats, and they've got burger beef. The beef jerky, Porter and I both eat it a ton. So they've got all the options. But if you live in Utah County or Salt Lake County, you're getting free delivery right now. So you're saving $75 by not shipping because they're giving you free delivery and 25% off all of their products. It's premium Wagyu beef. It's really, really good. Here's what you do. Do it now. Trust me. Go to wasatchwagyu.com right now. That's wasatchwagyu.com. Use the promo code ESPN25 to get 25% off your order. And again, if you live in Utah County or Salt Lake County, you're getting free delivery on all meat and jerky orders straight to your door, saving an extra $75. WasatchWagyu.com, promo code ESPN25. More next. Keep it here on ESPN 700. Who is this? What artist is being played on this radio show right now?
A little too short.
Too short. Is this Sarah's choice?
It was Once Upon a Time.
All right.
And I have a memory that weirdly remembers stuff like this. So
all right.
It's been a while. But I do remember her recommending this one at one point.
So I'm not going to pretend like I've never heard this song before. I very much have, because there's a blow the whistle, right? So that's a basketball. I am an admitted hip hop snob. If I don't know any new stuff. It has to be in the '90s, or I'm an old man that way.
In fact, I believe this was on a NBA 2K soundtrack at one point.
Okay.
To be specific.
Well, the triumphant return of Sarah Todd to the program on a Monday. Sarah, where have you been and how are you?
Oh, boy, where have I been? What a question. First of all, I don't care if Too Short's music or any of it was ever on any of the NBA 2Ks or anything that has to do with the NBA. The very fine point is that's an Oakland rapper. That's what's important.
Oh, okay. Well, you wanted a little O-Town today on the program. That's what it is.
And I have been, all over the place. I spent a long time back in California, pre-All-Star break and through the All-Star break, taking care of my dad. And then I was in Memphis the day before yesterday, and tonight I'm in Houston. I'm back with the Jazz, so lots going on. All right.
Well, I hope all is well on the home front. Of course, that is nothing you need to bring on air. I was just checking in with you, and thank you for your time today. I don't know if you've noticed, Sarah, but the Jazz have been in the news cycle a little bit over the past few weeks for things that aren't necessarily awesome for fans, but things that are a little bit complex. So we've talked a ton about tanking, as you know, as everyone else has on the show. And yes, the Jazz are doing it and have been doing it for 4 years. I believe they deserved to be punished. My question is, why really it feels like it's just the Jazz. But it's been a while since we've had you on. Where are you at with this story? Is the Jazz were fined $500K for tanking?
Yeah, I think that, in general, I'm fine with the fine. If that's going to be the rule that the NBA has when teams are tanking, that they're going to fine them for, not playing players who are healthy, fine. That's fine with me. What I'm not fine with is pretending that the Jazz tanking this year and that the way that they're doing it is more egregious or different than tanking has been for 20 plus years in the NBA. And I'm also not fine with Commissioner Adam Silver saying that the integrity of the game is being compromised and that this kind of behavior needs to be rooted out because it goes against the foundations of NBA competition. Those are quotes from Adam Silver that came along with the fine that was handed out to the Jazz and the Pacers. And I just think it's completely unfair, and it's really, really egregious to use those kinds of words when this is coming from an institution where losing is incentivized. So, if we're talking about the foundations of NBA competition, we're talking about a system where losing is incentivized. So this doesn't go against that foundation. This plays within that foundation. And tanking teams have been happening for a long time. I think that constantly people are talking about well, what could we do? Could we change the date where lottery odds are made? And can we do these things? And can we, take away protections that are on picks? That's not going to fix it. If bad record equals high draft pick, you are not going to fix the problem. And frankly, I don't really see it as much of a problem. Is there integrity in what the Sacramento Kings are doing? Is there integrity that injuries have been made up across rosters for years and years? Is there integrity in the fact that we probably won't see Anthony Davis and Trae Young play for the Washington Wizards this season? Let's not act like what the Utah Jazz are doing doesn't have integrity. That's not the situation.
So I wonder, you hit a couple of things there. And, I have, of course, on this show underscored the point and have had some guests on that have been able to provide some context that tanking has been happening since the 80s. I mean, Smitty came on and told the story of the Rockets essentially tanking for Olajuwon when they already had Ralph Sampson. The Spurs did the same thing with David Robinson to get Tim Duncan. I want to know, Sarah, in your opinion, why you think this has become such a topic. Part of me feels like it's, I don't know, like manufactured media outrage because it's been going on so long. Why do you think it's so topical right now in the NBA ecosystem?
I think that probably we're like it's coming to a head that this is the dead spot of the NBA season, right? Like I think that every year post trade deadline, from mid-February on to the end of the season, and that's usually until about the last week of the season when a few games actually matter, when whether it's for playoff positioning or like the tank race games that get really interesting at the end of the season. But there's this dead spot in the season. And with, the advent of social media and the 24-hour news cycle and all of those things, and like this part of the season being such a dead part, I think that it comes to a head. And like every year there's been different news stories that have kind of popped off right around this time of the season. And so I think that this is just the one that latched on this year. And then there's also, I'm not going to say that gambling is not a part of it, right? Like we have to admit that. And that's one of the reasons that I think that you can't use the word integrity when saying like the Jazz are doing something bad. It's like, well, the NBA has embraced gambling with wide open arms, and now you have to deal with the fact that that's actually a part of the world. Like, is it less integrity to tank a game, or is it more integrity to leak it out to gambling sites? Like, so I think that is part of it. And also, like, just the realization that parity is not as real as probably the league wants it to be is tied into this a little bit. And the fact that this is a really, really big and talented draft class, that is also tied into it.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is the talent that is certainly available coming up throughout the course of this draft cycle. But let's move off of it. I have tanking fatigue, and let's talk about some other things, namely your thoughts about the trade where the Jazz grabbed Jaren Jackson Jr. We saw 49 minutes before they shut him down with knee surgery, where Jaren Jackson Jr. and Larry Markkinen played together. And I know it's only 49 minutes, Sarah, but it looked really good. And I love the trade. I think he's exactly what they need. So best case scenario, in your opinion, how does this work out for the Jazz after trading for Jaren Jackson Jr.?
Yeah, best case scenario, the Jazz are able to re-sign Walker Kessler. An even better case scenario that Yusuf Nurkic, re-signs for a small deal to stay and he can be a backup center. And then you end up with three guys in the starting lineup who are basically 7 feet tall. And we've seen it a little bit this season with Nurkic and Lowry doing kind of like DHOs between 2 7-footers. And that's just something that you could integrate into like the entirety of the Jazz roster at this point. Best case scenario, the Jazz are able to get a high draft pick and add it to the roster. But even if you're just looking at like what could that starting unit look like, it could be Jaren Jackson Jr., Lauri Markkinen, Walker Kessler, Ace Bailey, and Keontae George. Like that is not a bad core to be moving forward with. And just the weirdness of having a front court that big, we saw that a little bit in Cleveland before the Jazz got Lowry. It was Lowry and Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, and how many problems that caused for opponents having that type of length and height and strength on the court at the same time. And I think that, I mean, in my opinion, the Lowry, Jaren Jackson Jr., Walker Kessler version of that is an even better version.
All right, so let's play a fun hypothetical. And I know you've been super busy, but if Lady Luck shines on the Jazz finally, and we're all sitting around on lottery night, and those ping pong balls bounce the right way, and the Jazz get the number 1 overall pick, it does appear that it's a 2 or a 3-person race, depending on who you think would fit in well, whether it's A.J. DeBonsa, Darren Peterson, or Cameron Boozer. The Peterson stuff is weird, but he would not be the first prospect to not play a ton and still get picked number 1. I mean, it happened with Kyrie. Fun to have AJ in our backyard. I've seen him a bunch, and he's awesome. And I don't know if you have any other names that you would add to the mix, but who do you think the Jazz should go with and why if they get number one?
Yeah, I think that if, once the NBA is allowed to start looking at the medical reports for these kids, and once they get more information, I think that if there's no kind of red flags up for Darren Peterson, that would be my choice. Like you said, we've seen this a lot in college, especially for the one and done guys. And I just want to remind everyone, kind of the weirdness that happened last year with Ace Bailey, leading up to the draft, right? That was a different situation. But in the weeks leading up to that moment, everyone put all of those decisions on Ace Bailey as if that 17, 18-year-old kid was making those choices. And it turned out that he was just getting really bad advice from someone who he believed had his best interest at heart. And so, when I'm seeing Darren Peterson, the first thing that goes through my head is, somebody's giving him bad advice. There's somebody that is saying something that's not good. That's the first thing that goes through my mind. I don't know that to be true, but it's just the first thing that pops into my head. And so I would hold off on thinking bad things about Darren Peterson until we have, more of a clear picture. That being said, it could be A.J. Debonsa. It could be Cam Boozer. I think that if the Jazz don't get the number one pick, let's say they get 4 and it ends up being Caleb Wilson, there are no bad answers here. And if depending on who you are, you could have any one of those guys as number one for your team, and you probably have a really good argument for it.
How many, and because your point about how deep the draft is very well taken. I think most people believe that Peterson and Debonsa are going to change the team, and Cameron Boozer might as well. Caleb Wilson, he's injured, which is too bad. As a result of Houston being in the Big 12, I've seen Kingston Flemings up close a couple of times. He's awesome. In your opinion, or based off of what you've been told or you've been reading, where is the line of delineation? If the Jazz fall past what, that becomes a bit of a problem.
Well, if they fall past 8, that's a problem.
For sure. Well, that's a massive problem, Sarah. Massive problem. Yeah.
I think that top 8, I think, is pretty solid. I mean, there's so many people between kind of 4 and 10, I think, that you're going to end up with a guy who could probably either contribute right away or that you believe could kind of have all-star potential for your team. And so even if we're talking outside of what the Jazz could do in the top 8, I think kind of 1 through 10, there are going to be very, very happy teams that are picking through those.
All right. Now, of course, and you did a good job of kind of walking us through what this could and hopefully will look like next year with Jaren Jackson Jr. when the Jazz are going to finally go all in and try to win. But, ultimately, this is a league where you need more than a couple of top-end guys. I want to ask you about some of the youngsters. And since it has been a while since we've had you on, the Keontae George story, I think, has been really cool and something that should be underscored because I wasn't even sure if he was an NBA guy at the end of last year. And it wasn't just his, at times inefficient shooting or bad decision-making. He kind of came across as a malcontent that thought he had arrived when he clearly had not. As the story goes, had a little bit of a come to Jesus. Will told him, here's the deal. Got to give the kid a lot of credit. He clearly got in the gym. And it's not just the improved skill set. It's also what I think, and you're there every night in a way that I'm not, is just seems like a better attitude about what you need to become a pro. So what have you made of the season? I'll just say the season Keontae has had, because I don't know how much we're going to see him the rest of the way.
Yeah, I absolutely said wonderfully by you you are not the only one who was wondering if he was an NBA guy. There were people within the organization that were like, if he doesn't get it, right? If something doesn't click in his mind where he is able to see that he's going about things the wrong way, then he won't be an NBA guy. And so I think that was, part of that come to Jesus conversation. And I've been around it all year, like you've said, and I cannot underscore enough, how different his approach is, how different his attitude is, how different his behavior on the court, not just his play, but his behavior. It is night and day from what it was the last couple of years. And he's completely switched the way that he approaches conversations, that he approaches even just talking with reporters after games, like I think that there's a natural maturation that is happening. And it's been really, really cool to see that in real time, right? Like, it was very frustrating, and it got to the point where I was like, God, this kid is so talented. He has the skill. And so it became like frustrating and disappointing to watch him in a way that was inefficient and a bad attitude, a bad approach, like all of those things kind of all together. But then it's really, really cool to see him like naturally mature, but then also kind of be pushed in that direction and accept the responsibility that comes with the kind of the skill level that he does have. It's an incredible story. He deserves all of the praise for everything that he's been able to do this season. And I think that really he's scratching the surface with what he's capable of, because I think that he can get better and do more.
All right, let's just stay in the space for a couple more minutes, and I'll set you loose about the young players, because the rest of the way, we know the deal. They're not even trying to win, and we understand why. And I unfortunately believe it's probably the right thing to do, even though it just sucks in so many ways. As you outlined earlier, it's not their fault. This is the incentive structure of pro basketball, and this is how you acquire talent. So change that if you want to change this. But as far as some of the youngsters, Ace Bailey, of course, early on had a bit of an illness, wasn't fully healthy, and they just kind of let him ease in step by step by step. And there are so many moments, so many like jaw-dropping moments where you just see what the kid has got. So up to this point in the season, how would you characterize, in your opinion, the season Ace has had?
Yeah, I think slowly coming along because of, like the early illness and stuff. And like also, a lot of people are like, oh, he was sick to start the season. Like, that's not that big of a deal. It's like he also has asthma. And so if you add a respiratory illness to somebody who's asthmatic, like that takes a little bit bigger of a toll than it does in like someone who just had the flu at the start of the season. Right. And so that really, really took him out of things. And it's not just that like he has kind of slowly come along, but also I think the Jazz have protected him from himself a little bit. Like, they are not setting up a bunch of like plays or pick and pop, actions for him to just like be bombing threes all the time. I think that like very, very strategically, they have tried to see what he can do in more of a playmaking role. And that's surprised a lot of people, right? Like coming out of Rutgers, he wasn't a passer. And so to see that he's been so unselfish on an NBA court has actually, I think, unlocked a lot that he'll be able to do in the future. And so I think that protecting him a little bit and getting him to work on different parts of his game, I think that you'll see him kind of let loose a little bit more next season and in the coming years. But it's been a really, really gradual, steady, nice rise for him. And I think that not being invited immediately to the Rising Stars team, I think that's fine. I understand it, especially with how slow the start of the season was compared to some of the guys that did get invited. But him being a replacement and then also kind of being acknowledged like league wide for what he's been doing lately is exactly the right narrative.
All right, I want to ask you about just a couple more young players and just your opinion about whether or not they're around for the long haul. Because these final 25 games, my guess would be this is kind of a mini tryout for these young players to prove that they want to be here and will be here as the Jazz try to get better next year. So Bryce Sensabaugh, we know what he can do because he does it well, but there are several things he probably needs to add to the game. Just like a mini progress report, Sarah, on Bryce.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, this is going to be a tryout, and it also has to be taken with a grain of salt, right? Like, through the kind of the doldrums of the season now, they're going to be going up against teams that are basically G League teams on certain nights, right? Like, not every game is going to be against top-end talent. I mean, the Pelicans are going to be in town twice next week, and so that's going to be interesting to see what happens there. And other teams as the season goes along too. But like, so if Bryce or the other guys play really, really well during a game where the talent on the other side of the court is basically G League talent, like, is that really representative of what Bryce Sensabaugh or anyone else can do? And so you're right. We know what Bryce does well. He can shoot the heck out of the ball. but there are lapses defensively that are still clear and present, and it's going to be hard. I mean, especially because now as the Jazz play out the rest of the season, they're playing a lot of their two-way guys, and they're also got John Conchar and Vince Williams Jr. in that trade. And so you're looking at those guys compared to what the young guys that you have on the court, and you have to decide which one's better and which one has a better chance of actually giving us depth, efficient, or, reliable, consistent depth when we're trying to win games.
All right. I'll speak for myself. I was expecting more from Kyle Filipowski this year. Sophomore slumps aren't very rare in the NBA. He doesn't look like he's any stronger this year than he was. That's my thing with him. He gets pushed off his spot a ton. The skill is there. He can dribble, pass, and shoot for a guy that's that tall. I'm not out on him. I just guess I thought I would see more growth. What about you?
Yeah, I think that Kyle is probably the one player that I am still willing to kind of give a pass on this season and not really say that I've learned enough to know what is there, because he's had to play the center position so much. And, no matter what his skill is, Kyle Filipowski is not an NBA 5. He can't do it. He's not strong enough. He doesn't have that skill set. He needs to be an NBA 4. But he's had to play at center so much this season that it's kind of unfair to evaluate him based on that. And so I would love to see more of him playing positionally where he is supposed to play before I really give kind of a determination on what he is. So he's kind of the only one where and I agree with you, he seems like he's just not strong enough. He seems like he's a little bit soft, but I wonder if it would look like that if he wasn't kind of battling against other NBA 5s so much.
Fair enough. Last one, Isaiah Collier. I just feel like it's the same thing. When you're like, man, that dude is strong. He is fast, end to end, as fast as anyone that we've had here for a while. The vision, the playmaking, all that stuff, ball handling, continues to show itself in a way that indicates he could be good at this if he decides to work on the jumper and adds that to the arsenal, and maybe some defensive prowess as well. Last one, Isaiah Collier. Tell me what you've seen and what you're hoping to see moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Fast, passing, that's all good, and it won't be good enough if the Jazz are wanting to be a playoff team, right? Teams will absolutely scheme him out of the rotation. So unless he actually starts playing point of attack defense, he just gets absolutely wiped out by screens. He gets beat off the dribble, and the shot is still a problem. And so unless he can do those things, then it is really, really hard to imagine him being played during any kind of postseason play.
All right, Sarah, appreciate the time. Good to have you back. Tell our listeners where they can go get your work, and I'll set you loose.
Yeah, you can find me at NBA Sarah. You can read all the stuff at the Deseret News, Deseret.com. All
right, Sarah, be good. Safe travels. We'll see you soon, okay?
Thanks a lot, Spence.
All right, Sarah Todd, we got 2 hours down. We have 2 hours to go. Coming up next, the newest Jazz beat writer for the Salt Lake Tribune, Kevin Reynolds. We'll do some college football with Kev, though. He covered both BYU and Utah on the college football side before moving over to the Jazz stuff, as Andy Larson has left that position. And then don't forget, Kurt Schmidt will stop by. We'll recap RSL's opening day loss and look ahead to the home opener on Saturday. 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. Keep it here on ESPN 700. All right, Kurt Schmidt's going to join us, technical director for Real Salt Lake, as we kind of saw RSL play Vancouver. When I saw the starting 11, I thought I was watching a Monarchs game, but Kurt is going to walk us through as to why. Our next guest is the Jazz beat writer for the Salt Lake Tribune. That sounds weird, Kevin Reynolds, doesn't it?
Very weird. Still, I think that's the first time I've actually heard that. So, yeah, very weird.
Well, congratulations, young man. Well deserved. Take us through this process. And I do want to do a little college football with you before we get into some Jazz stuff, because that's how you're known on this program. But, I mean, you had a really good gig, and you still have a really good gig. But what ultimately led you to becoming the new beat writer for the Jazz?
Yeah. For me, it's a very weird experience overall because I grew up a college football fan. Like, I was a college football guy going to Rutgers games with my dad. Like, that's how I grew up. So I never really watched the NBA much. I never went to NBA games outside of maybe one Nets and Knicks game. So for me in this process over the last 4 years is like obviously done a ton of college football, but being in this market and being around Aaron and Andy and those guys who have all done the NBA and have all covered the Jazz, I just felt like I wanted to have a new challenge, a new experience, and to see what's different about something else and like just kind of grow in that way. So that's what it was for me. And, I'll still be around doing BYU stuff and doing Utah stuff. I don't think there's a world here where you can just be only the Utah Jazz, I think, at this point. So I'll still be around, but definitely excited to just learn something new and see some new things.
So I wanted to tap in because I can remember when you were first hired, and, now you've been around here for quite some time covering the college football ecosystem, college football landscape. And I actually haven't it's rare for me to have a guest to talk about a college football storyline that I haven't talked about as it pertains to Kyle Whittingham living in Ann Arbor now. But I haven't had you on the show since that happened. And I know it's yesterday's news, and we've all moved on and believe Morgan's ready for this endeavor and challenge, which I believe that he is. But how did you kind of, as somebody who's covered college football in Utah and BYU in the state, how did that story kind of hit you? What was that news cycle like for you?
It was crazy because I was in Orlando at the Pop-Tarts Bowl with Kalani and a bunch of the BYU people that morning when it became pretty clear that Michigan was going to probably hire Kyle Whittingham, and it happened within basically 12 hours of that. And so you kind of just see in live time how BYU is reacting to it, because for so long, it's weird because it's not through the Utah lens, but it's through the BYU lens. But for so long in that job, it was like, there's no way Kyle Whittingham is actually going to be the top choice for Michigan, because he wasn't. I've heard CK on your show, and I've heard so many people talk about this in the reporting process of so many things had to go right. So many things had to happen for Kyle Whittingham to not only leave Utah, but then in a couple weeks later, after he says he's going to leave Utah, or a couple days or whatever it was, become the head coach at Michigan. So many coaches had to say no. So many things had to fall into place. I mean, Sharon Moore, that whole situation has to happen, and just how crazy that was. And so from my perspective, though, I was in Orlando, and now the conversation was immediately, who is he going to take? And Jay Hill obviously is the top priority for Kyle to bring in, and how well he's done at BYU, and a potential head coach one day for sure for Jay Hill. And what does Jay Hill want to do? Because BYU had just made this massive commitment to Kalani to say that they are going to not only extend Kalani, but give him a ton more money and a ton more leverage for his assistant coaching pool. And if Jay Hill goes, like, who's he going to take with him too? And I remember that morning asking Kalani, like, how good do you feel with this contract extension in terms of, are you going to be able to retain the guys that have won 20 plus games in the last 2 years? And his answer, I thought, said a lot about where the direction of that day and that week was going to go, and saying, I think he said something along the lines of, I can't really keep everybody here all the time, but we have contingency plans in place. And from there, obviously, we saw the fallout from both programs. But yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, wild news cycle. And, I did just some radio hits that week, and, of course, a couple TV things around here. And I was asked one question by people out of state that I still don't really have an answer to. And it was pretty fascinating because in a matter of like 3 or 4 days, Witt became a national name in a way that he never was in 21 years here, because it's the Michigan job. And the magnitude of having that job is something that probably a lot of people fully don't understand or comprehend, because it is one of the biggest jobs in sports, not just college football. But the question I was asked, Kev, was if Kyle Whittingham wanted to keep coaching college football, why isn't he doing that in Salt Lake City, Utah? And I still don't fully know that I understand the answer, but what's your insight there?
I don't fully know the answer either, but this is my take on the situation, though. Because it was weird before Michigan. Like, I think we do have to acknowledge that. Like, the last month of this season, and really since Kyle said that he wasn't going to coach past 65, I mean, every single year it was this question of, will you coach? Do you want to keep going? What is going to be the future for you? And then I think, particularly this year, there was just, you kind of sense some restlessness from, is there going to be a change in terms of, does Morgan want this job? Like, how long can you retain Morgan to be the coach in waiting before he actually becomes the head coach? And I think once Utah made the decision was made, I guess, that Kyle Whittingham was not going to be the head coach, however that happened, I think there still needs to be reporting on exactly whose decision that was. But as soon as that decision was made that he was not going to be the head coach at Utah, I think Utah had to be comfortable with the fact that it is still possible that Kyle Whittingham could coach at a different school. Now, obviously, I don't think anyone foresaw that Michigan was going to be the answer, because I think this is perceived a lot differently if it's Kyle Whittingham coaching Washington State or Kyle Whittingham coaching a different team that's not Michigan, with a legitimate national championship every single year as a possibility, and the Big Ten and this massive job where he becomes a national figure. I don't think that happens at a ton of jobs. Obviously, that job wasn't open. But as soon as Utah made the decision that it was going to be Morgan, it is a little bit of a gamble to me that you have to know that he wasn't maybe entirely done coaching, because I was there the night that right before that practice, or the practice right after he announced it. And that was the conversation. You could tell. I mean, he was like, we'll see. You know, he said that he was in the transfer portal. So there was obviously something there, that there was this on the table if the job became open, that he could take it.
So when it comes to what's next, and I've done my best and probably failed at times to cover this story through the prism of wanting good things for Kyle and also believing that it's Morgan's time and he's ready for this. I know we're supposed to just have one hot take, but a lot of people upset in the marketplace and feel betrayed by Kyle Whittingham. Now, I view that as beyond silly. And, you know, for anybody that needs the assurances and the simply, online high fives of people that exist on the internet, I would encourage you to get off the internet and just stop reading this BS. But the bottom line is, you know, the ecosystem of college football, and for Ute fans who believe that Kyle did something wrong taking coaches and players with him, I would encourage them to go ask New Mexico fans how they felt last year when Utah took their offensive coordinator, their quarterback, their running back, and their wide receiver. Matt Campbell took 19 players to Penn State. Witt takes 5, 4 of whom played a year ago and were really good, and one of whom was the number 1 recruit in the country, and then takes his coaches, his guys with him. And when I was asked the question, which players will follow Kyle to Michigan, I said, whichever players Kyle wants, he's going to get. And the same thing with the coaches. Which coaches are going to follow him? Whichever ones he wants. And the only one, at least my understanding, that Kyle may have wanted to follow him but did not is Sharif Shaw. So moving over into the space of your reaction when Witt decided, you know, to come after some players and coaches, and what the reaction of that was around the community. What are your thoughts there?
Well, first I'll start with, I'm completely agreeing with you that at Michigan and the opportunity to coach there or play there, it is, in college football, there really is no comparison. I mean, there's only a few schools like Michigan in college football, so I think you're right. It's whoever he wants. Like, it wasn't a question. If he wanted Jay Hill, like, to go to the BYU side of things, if he wanted Jay Hill was going. And I thought his quote the other day was pretty telling. He said, you know, when they asked him, I think him and Jason Beck too said the same thing of, was it a difficult decision? And both of them said, no, of course it's not a difficult decision. Jason Beck, I think, even went as far to say that his family was encouraging him to take it. And it's true. It's like the right move. And for players, it's the right move for a lot of them. I think players playing time has a factor in it too. There might be a little bit more variables for a player, but it makes sense. So I think for everybody, and you saw the reaction from fans online where it's just like, guys, like they were making it quite personal. Like I just thought that was it, probably over the line, but also it's just the understanding of this is college football. It happens every year. It hasn't happened at Utah a ton just because it's so rare for a guy to stay for 2 decades. But, Kyle Whittingham taking the Michigan job and taking coaches with him, that is how college football works. And so there was no surprise there. And I thought some of the reaction online was, I think, a little disappointing too, from a fan base from both sides. Like, it wasn't just Utah fans either. There was BYU fans talking about Jay Hill too. So. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, look, Kyle wanted to keep coaching. He wanted to stay at Utah. I can tell you that he did. And I understand the reasoning that I've learned from people that believed it was time for him to go somewhere else. I get all sides of it. I know that's not the way we're supposed to roll. But when it comes to – because I remember when you first landed on the ground and I had you on the air for the first time, I asked you about – the BYU-Utah rivalry and what you knew about it at the time. And you were new to the job. You were new to the state. So you basically said you wanted to get to know about it, and you have now. So before you leave the college football beat, I want to know what you've learned about our college football community, the BYU-Utah rivalry game, and that entire dynamic as you leave the college football beat to go cover some NBA hoops.
Yeah. I think it's a great rivalry. I think and I think I'll still be covering it for sure, but in some capacity for us, I don't know exactly what that looks like right now, but yeah, I think it's a great rivalry. And the one thing that I think is so interesting about it, and I haven't really been around this much, maybe Texas versus Texas A&M, even when they were not playing, but it's a year-long commitment to and people and fans put the BYU-Utah rivalry, it colors the perspective in every single facet of, it's not just like, oh, it happens 1 week a year. It's every reaction, every email, a lot of emails I get are from Utah fans talking about BYU and a lot of BYU fans talking about Utah. And it doesn't matter what it is. But I also think there's downsides to that. I mean, it definitely can get quite ugly, like we've seen with the Kyle Whittingham stuff. We've seen it with some of the stuff we've reported on with Jake Retzlaff and now Parker Kingston. I think it definitely can have a very bad side of this rivalry and kind of the way it goes. But at the same time, I do think it overall, I mean, how passionate these two fan bases are has been quite impressive overall.
Last college football thing, and then we'll move over to your new gig. But you wrote a piece last August after Clark Gilbert's comments. A top LDS church official said BYU sports would never pay for play. Liar. Then came millions more in spending, and it's led to the uncomfortable question: is this modern version of athletics at odds with BYU's mission? Well, it's interesting because over the past couple of years, we'll just point to a few things here or there. Kalani is now one of the 3 or 4 highest paid coaches in the Big 12 on the football side. Kevin Young, one of the 3 or 4 highest paid coaches on the basketball side. The reports are $5 million for 7 months of basketball from A.J. DeBonsa, $3 million for Rob Wright. And they are among the highest spending teams in the Big 12, both college football, college basketball. I didn't say the highest, but among the highest spending teams. And since you wrote that piece, Jake Retzlaff, Kennard Davis has been arrested, and now the Parker Kingston story, which is all over the place. And I just wonder, as we come up on, close to a year since you wrote that, maybe it's time to revisit it a little bit. Like, I just really am curious how the decision makers who are actually in charge of Brigham Young University, who happen to work up here on South Temple, and then the folks that are writing the checks, how these salacious, embarrassing headlines are striking them and whether or not this is a thing they're going to look at to change. I'm not buying the whole, like, they're going to cancel sports at BYU. I've never believed that. But Monson wrote a really good piece for you guys, sltrib.com, after the Kingston story and situation broke, outlining all these things that have gone down. There was a former baseball player that has been convicted now of some really horrible things. I don't even want to say it on air. Go ahead and look at it online if you'd like. But let's revisit this. Where do you think we're at with this thing with BYU, where they're clearly spending top dollar for talent, and the mission that they profess their sports program is about is being compromised by some bad behavior? I just wonder how it's landing down there.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that needs more reporting. And I know Gordon's story, I think, definitely raised the question. I think it's a valid one. And let's not forget, at the same time, Clark Gilbert, the same guy in that story, has been elevated. You know, he's more powerful now than what he was in that story. And his voice, I think, resonates even more than when he was just the commissioner of education. So, you know, I think it depends on – I said it at the time, and I still think it's true. In the conversations I've had, I think it definitely depends on who you ask in terms of what impact everything will have in terms of their commitment to continue to pour money into this thing. But I can tell you from the athletic department side and the people I talk to in athletics, they have been just resolute in this idea of the fact that BYU has gone all in and that they're going to be going all in the Big 12 for the foreseeable future. Definitely when Kevin Young is still the coach. And Kalani Sitake, they just made a massive commitment to him in terms of the contract extension and the commitment to assistant coaches and all the pool of money that they've done. So it's hard to see, for me, a world in which they can or will reverse course on this. And I'm not talking about sports. I'm just saying in terms of this level of commitment, because they also just agreed, but they also just made Brian Santiago their athletic director. And Brian Santiago, unlike Tom Homo, I think is even more committed to putting BYU in this national spotlight. I think look at what he just did for the football team. I think he goes and gets Notre Dame on the schedule 2 times and brings them to Provo. And I just think these are the actions of a guy and a leadership, at least from the athletic department, that says it's 10 toes down, it's all in. You know, we're not reversing course on this, even if there are questions from the leadership side down in Salt Lake. But at the same time, you have people in Salt Lake who are making comments like, this is not who BYU is. And will there be a collision course one day? Will there be some reckoning on this? I don't know. I don't know what that will look like. But the questions will continue to be asked. But in terms of like the reality of it and the practicality of it, I don't think I see a world where BYU in the next 5 to 10 years isn't spending significantly on this, because they're all in, and all the people they just put in place and signed to long-term deals or new deals have this vision. And maybe they're more committed to that than they were 2 years ago even. So that's my take on it right now.
Before we get over to the piece you wrote about Ace and some of your Jazz coverage, I did have a Utah athletics question for you, because we had your buddy Jason Batacchio took a break from playing Halo to hop on the show the other day. So we were able to catch up with him. What a funny little guy, by the way. What a funny little dude Jason is. But, you know, I think a lot of people, and certainly myself included around the market, just have a lot of questions about this private equity deal and what it's going to look like, when it's going to be announced, how the money is going to be utilized. And, you know, I keep reminding people like Taylor Randall, who has a very proficient, successful business background. He's the president of the school. So, like, he's probably getting pressure from folks around the entire university. Like, if you're going to give sports this, we're saving lives at the hospital. Okay. Can we get some money? Like, I don't think it's all going to be used for the athletic department, but it's been reported that this is going to help out with some renovations for the Huntsman Center, maybe some upgrades to Rice Eccles, and as fans are wishing, paying for talent. Any insight about this private equity deal with Utah, when we might hear details and what that's going to look like?
You know, I don't have a timeline, and I've listened to Taylor Randall on your show. I've listened to Taylor Randall on a lot of things, and also Taylor Randall came into the Tribune and talked a lot about, you know, the hospital, the educational mission, and then where athletics falls into that. And I asked him during that, well, you know, is there a point in athletics? This was before the private equity deal was even announced, or before this wasn't a question about private equity. I was just curious, like, was there a point where, you know, public institutions across so many, you know, parts of you know, college athletics are going in debt to fund revenue sharing, going in debt to fund these just massive expenses to be in the Power Four? And was there a point of no return, or was there something where, Utah would just say this is not worth it? And from what he said is like, he felt like athletics was a really valuable part to the mission of the university. So to me, and then the private equity deal comes out, and it looks like this is the path they're going to go down to be able to afford to play in the Big 12, and not only play in the Big 12, but compete with teams like BYU and Texas Tech and where they want to go. And so for me, I don't have any insights in terms of what the details of the private equity deal are or when it's going to come out. But to me, it does signal like this is the last ditch effort. This is their answer to how are they going to afford it, and we'll see if it works. It does feel to me like a gamble, but it also feels to me like the first of many colleges that are going to go down this path too.
All right, last thing that will set you loose. Andy Larson leaving the Utah Jazz beat after 13 years. He'll stay with the Trib to do some other things, and you are now moving over into Andy's seat. So tell us about kind of how you plan to approach this job, maybe a little bit different than Andy, that'll be more uniquely you, and tell us about the first piece you wrote on Ace Bailey before I set you loose.
Yeah. I mean, and I think Andy's done a great job, and he's been on it. He's an expert. He's been at it for a long time, and he's definitely helped me out in terms of understanding what's going on in the Jazz, which I have a lot of room to grow to understand fully what's going on. But just my general philosophy to it is, I think a lot of fans know about the games. I think they know if the Jazz win or lose. I think they largely know who's playing well and who's not playing well. I look at our job as to tell you why something is happening, like why they made a trade, why this particular trend is going on with the Jazz, or just to write a story that you didn't know anything about and connect you to something that is such a part of our community and part of people's family lives. Like for me growing up, like Rutgers football was that for my dad, talking about all these different reports. Like we would read the newspaper, we'd listen to the radio all the time growing up, going to these games and talk about this team. And it was a connection point for us. And so for me, like that's what I look at, is telling the stories that you want to talk about with the important people in your life, and telling you the why of things. And I think that looks different every single day. Like for me at like BYU, some days that's talking about AJ DeBonza and like why he's getting there. Other days it's talking about Jake Retzlaff leaving and like what's going on there a month before the season. And so like I don't think there's like one simple solution, but I think it's looking for good stories, and that's what I hope to do. It's what I hope to do at BYU, and definitely hope to do on the Jazz as well.
Kev, where can people go find the work, bud?
Yeah, Salt Lake Tribune at the sltrib.com. We'll have all of our stuff for the Jazz going forward and everything else everybody else is doing over here. And then, yes, on Twitter as well, Kevin Reynolds 30, I think it is. But got to tweet more. That's or maybe not. I don't know. We'll see.
Not a guy. Look, let's go swing a golf club soon, okay?
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, Kevin Reynolds, now you're Utah Jazz beat writer from the Salt Lake Tribune. Did a really good job on the college football beat, covering both Utah and BYU. Excited for him. Nice kid and really talented journalist. You referenced his Twitter page, and if you're a Jazz fan, you can expect really good content from our friends at the Salt Lake Tribune. It's sltrib.com. All right, before we catch a break, Prize Picks, not Sports Picks. Well, I guess you make sports picks on Prize Picks, but I've confused you already. It's called Prize Picks. Shoot your shot on Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right, Prize Picks is now giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5. Prize Picks makes every dunk, every dime, and every board that much more exciting, so don't miss your chance to get started. On America's #1 app for sports picks, Prize Picks is available in Utah, so no worries there. There's a new feature alert where you get early payouts. If your player gets off to a hot start, you now have the option to cash out your winnings before the game even finishes. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use that promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup, because on Prize Picks, it is good to be right. All right, we'll get back to the massive story of the news cycle over the past 48 hours, that the gold medal in men's hockey resides in the United States in the 5 o'clock hour. But coming up next, RSL dropped their opening match of the season 1-0 to Vancouver. and they're going to play Seattle. Home opener coming up. Kurt Schmidt is our guest coming up on the other side right here on ESPN 700. soccer season has begun. Did you guys know that? MLS. I think didn't they name that tournament after COVID the MLS is back tournament? Wasn't it that reductive and dopey and stupid? Am I remembering that correctly?
That was the name.
That's right. That's right. So the MLS is back. It's not the official name of the tournament at the start of the season, but it is here. And the Utah Monarchs took. Oh wait, no, that was RSL. Real Salt Lake lost to Vancouver 1-0. I kid Kurt Schmidt. I just have to say, when I saw the starting 11, I went, wait, what exactly is going on? But all joking aside, I don't know. I feel like you got to be proud. A lot of those young men. Vancouver's really good. And I know it's an L, and you guys want to win every game. But overall, is it safe to say you were pretty pleased with what you saw?
I mean, I think you kind of hit the crux of it for me is, you never like to feel too positive, or you never feel too positive about a loss. But, for me at least, and I think for the staff, it was an informative game. And I think we learned a lot about some young guys that put in some really gutsy performances.
All right, let's because honestly, when I saw the 11, I'm like, wait a second, this is the Monarchs and Justin Glad and Yedlin, right? I mean, then Cabral, of course, but let's just get an overall update of the things that you feel comfortable sharing that happened behind the scenes, whether it's injuries or paperwork or visas that led to a starting 11 that caught a lot of RSL fans extremely off guard.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, we've signed a lot of players in the last few weeks, and certainly, those are all pending a couple of things. One of them is the ITC, which we get from FIFA, and the other one is their work visa, which obviously everyone needs when they come to the U.S. From abroad to work. So, that's what we're waiting on for a number of players, and we're confident we're going to get a few of those heading into game 2 here. But the other issue that we hit was, a few unexpected injuries. All of them, I think, were, surprising in their nature, and that they weren't sort of foreseeable events that led to them, but unfortunate nonetheless, and that created even more selection headaches for Pablo.
So I think the two names that, well, I'll just speak for myself, that I was expecting to see in the 11, it was Diego and Victor Olatunji. Is that health related, or was it kind of like, hey, we're just going to go all in on this kind of young lineup and just kind of save these two maybe for the home opener?
It was health. I mean, we obviously don't want to put guys at bigger risk than we need to for the future. It's the beginning of a long season. I don't know if this was the end of the season. I don't know if I could tell you what if anything would have been different, but certainly, when guys pick up knocks, neither of which are sort of, major sort of catastrophic things, but when guys have some injuries like that, we don't want to push them to the point of having it become something recurring or more serious than it is right now. Okay, so you got to help me understand here, because the goal that PL scored, and the play leading up to the goal, it was wonderful. I mean, it was very well put together, and in real time, it didn't look like offsides as Katranis played it into Ari, who had a great finish, and then the replay didn't seem to indicate that it was offsides, yet the offsides stood. Now, I was watching on television. You were there, Kurt. I would imagine you were there at least. What am I missing? Why was that goal first disallowed due to offsides, and then that was upheld after going to replay? Yeah, the lines. It looked like the linesman called Alex Katranis offside on the initial ball in behind, which was a phenomenal pass from Luka Moisa. Good vision to see it, and he struck it really well. Alex was looking across the line, didn't need to be offside. There's certainly a camera angle where it doesn't look like he was offside, where it looks like he was pretty even, but just the way the VAR is implemented, wasn't in his favor in that moment, because it sort of gives precedence and favor to the call on the field. And so when the call on the field is offside, the evidence to overturn it has to be, more, they call it clear and obvious, more or less like, irrefutable. We don't want guys re-refereeing the whole game. But yeah, it was close, but it was certainly one where, it wasn't irrefutable that he was onside, and that's probably largely because, we don't have enough camera angles and the semi-automated offside stuff that they have in the UK and those sorts of things.
I feel like when it comes to determining when a team scores a goal, maybe a little bit more grace is given. I'm laughing because it's a ridiculous way to put that. But goals are hard, okay? Like, goals are hard. Let us score goals. You thieves of joy, MLS officials.
They and I feel like they say every year how they're, they want to adjust things and give guidance that will sort of give more leeway, not leeway, but just, create more situations where more goals happen. And like you said, more joy occurs, hopefully. But, at the end of the day, it is what it is. I don't know that much changes each year from year to year, to be honest.
So, Ari's game overall, there are these moments where you can see the potential and the talent, and then there are moments where the decision-making is very, very puzzling. Of course, when you have your full complement of players, Ari will not be your starting 9, and maybe even not a 9 that sees a lot of time. But tell me what you made of his performance being thrust in that role, basically that lone striker spot.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the goal he did score, he took really well.
Yep.
It wasn't his fault that the guy who crossed him the ball was adjudged to be offside, but, he did a great job to get in a good spot in that play and score a goal. And, I think the other play that probably sticks in people's minds and our minds is the shot that he took into the side netting from a very poor angle. And, that I think is something where his vision and his decision-making can improve a lot. But I will give him a ton of credit for creating that opportunity in and of himself, just out of nothing, a pass back to the goalkeeper that he sniffs out and does a great job defending and creating a transition moment. So, I think there's certainly a lot of positives there from Ari's performance. I think he did a good job in terms of executing the game plan. I think there were moments, like any player, that he can improve, and the coaches will do video with him. And, at the end of the day, striker is a tough position, right? It's tough and it's easy at the same time. It's a tough one to play. It's an easy one to assess. You score goals, you had a great game. You don't score goals, a lot of people think you didn't have a great game. So, I do think there's a lot of value that he adds, even when he's not scoring. But again, it's an easy position to assess, and you got to score goals at the end of the day. So he's still a young kid that's coming along, and he'll get there.
I feel like some of these young players deserve a little love, and I will just admit to not knowing much about him. We did have Pablo on the show last week, and he told us that Luka Moisa was going to get the start. And he said he's a young player. And then when they showed him on television, I said, you didn't tell me he was 10. I mean, my man looks like he is a kid. But, hey, I thought just juxtaposed to what expectations were, I thought he showed pretty well from that midfielder spot. Kurt, tell us about this kid and what'd you make of the way he performed?
Yeah, I think relative to expectations, he was phenomenal.
Yeah.
In terms of just like in absolute terms, I thought he was solid, and he put in a good shift, and he covered ground. He worked hard. There's some things of his first game, right? So even, you're drinking from a fire hose in that type of environment, and he's got there's a lot of lessons I'm sure he'll take from that. But I thought he had a really solid game out of possession, a really solid game in possession. Like I said, the ball he played to Alex for the goal that got called back was excellent. And that's the sort of thing that, we've come to expect from him in the academy and the Monarchs environments. His soccer brain, his soccer IQ, his technical ability, his passing range and ability. There's not a lot of doubt about those qualities. He has those things. With him, it was sort of, when is the physical component going to come along and put him in a position to get into those games in MLS. And to be honest, yeah, I think the big surprise, and I'll speak for myself, but for me personally, was that he was able to transition as early as this preseason. Because I think, come last season with the Monarchs, he did really, really well. But when he trained in the first team environment, you could see that he was maybe physically a little bit behind it. And I think he put in a lot of work last year and a lot of work in the offseason, and then came in this preseason and showed everyone that he was ready to be considered. So at that point, it's just about seizing your opportunity and that's what he's been doing. And, he's again, another young kid, and those kids can improve very, very quickly as they assimilate new information. And I'm sure that's what he's going to spend this week doing. And, we'll hope to see things improve rapidly with him. But I think he did a great job, and I forget now if you asked me about him, but, I don't want to miss Aiden Hezerkani as well, who was one of the top performers for Monarchs last season. And he did a great job coming in, and he only knew he was playing maybe a few days before the game, and stepped in and did a great job.
Yeah, I was going to get to Aiden, but since you handled that, we'll leave that aside. My follow-up is, currently, do you think Luka is watching tape or SpongeBob SquarePants?
I don't know why you can't do both, Spence.
Fair enough. I'm telling you, I was stunned at how young he looked.
Phones and iPads. No.
Okay, fair enough. We should talk about Zach, though, as well, who also got his first start. And same thing, I just don't know much about him. And as I'm watching him flow the game, I'm like, man, there's a lot to like about this kid. Another young player gets his start in addition to the other two that we've talked about. So what'd you like about the way Zach performed?
Yeah, Zach. Zach was over in Europe. He was playing most recently, in Holland. Last year, he was with the team that got promoted from the second division to the first division in Holland, and he's come in and just put his head down and gotten to work. He was a kid who came through our academy, but then he left before coming back this year, and he's a Utah kid. He really, really wants to be here. Really has a lot of pride in representing the club, and I think he's another one that didn't really know he was playing until maybe 48 hours before the game, or even less potentially, and handled it really, really well. He does a great job in transition moments, defense to offense when there's a lot of space. He covers ground. He's got good acceleration, decent speed. He can carry the ball well. I think he showed that in moments in this last game. And, again, another young kid that's new to the league and needs to adapt to that. But I thought, in his first game, in his debut, showed very well.
All right, one more takeaway from this game, and then we'll spend the remaining few minutes on getting to know these new players and getting a little bit of an update as far as when we might see them. We had another debut. It was your rookie that you drafted, the Solons kid, right? That's the first time we had seen him. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what'd you tell us a little bit about him, and what did you make of the way he kind of showed himself? It was only a few minutes, but just one more takeaway, and then we'll move forward.
Look, Sergi just got back to us during the week, middle of the week, so didn't have a full week of training with the team. So that's why, we had to bring them off the bench. We weren't, we don't want to hurt these guys that we're just getting back because, they haven't really been training with us. So it's tough to throw them in for too many minutes until we know what they can do and see what they can do. But I thought he did well. I think he's got another guy with a high level soccer IQ, understands the game, understands how to move, where to move. His hold up play is going to be very good. He can play a few different positions in the attack for us. And he's obviously, he's got a knack for scoring goals, as he's shown us the last couple of years in college at UCLA and Oregon State. So we're really excited about him. He's done really well in preseason, and I think with a full week of training under his belt, back with the group, he's going to do even better next week.
All right. I haven't talked to you since these signings became official, but I did have Jason on before the signing started, and I forced him to give me a number, which he hated doing, but he did say at least 5 or 6 signings would happen, and 5 did. And maybe 6 did too. The Solons kid might make it 6. So let's kind of go down the list. Let's get to know these new players. And let's, of course, start with your designated player, Morgan Gialavogi, who, is a player a lot of people are excited to see with this new 3-5-2 formation, maybe up there next to Olatunji. But what kind of led you to him? How'd you kind of discover him, the process that brought you to him, and when may we see him actually play a little soccer, Kurt?
Yeah, he's someone, strangely enough, he's someone that we've monitored over the past few years. We saw him in the second division in France. We saw him when he first moved to Lens. We actually wanted to get him before he went to Germany, to St. Pauli, but he obviously, we didn't get him then. And then he was available again now, and he's he's someone that is physically very, very good. He also does really well in transition moments. His combination hold of play is really good. He's obviously trained with us a little bit, and we've seen some good moments from him. I think his chemistry with Gozo, with Victor Olatunji, even, guys like Yedlin up the right side is going to be very, very good. And those guys will be very difficult for teams to defend. And I think he's got an ability to both get on the end of things, but also an underrated ability to set things up and create chances for others.
Timeline for his arrival/availability. Any thoughts there?
Look, fingers crossed, but we hope to have him join us for training middle to late this week, and then he would be available for the game on the weekend.
Oh, very cool. Okay, let's move over to Juan Manuel Sanabria, player who I had not really heard much about, but since the signing have learned about. It feels like there's a lot of buzz around what he can do in this formation. So same question, what should we know about him? And then when may we see him playing for RSL?
Juanma is, tireless worker, great human, great person, but also a leader. On the field, he's got a very even temper about him. He's very composed. He covers a ton of ground at high speeds, can run the whole flank, is able to kind of defend in our box, attack in the opponent's box, and do it all really quickly. And so in this system, it really suits him to give him a role where he has the freedom to do a bit of both and to cover that whole line by himself. He puts a good ball in the box. He gets on the end of things, on the weak side, so he's going to really add to our attack when we get forward. But I think he's also got some real defensive quality about him as well when we need him to chip in on that side as well. So, he's a guy that's hopefully continues to be in the mix with the Uruguayan national team as he was towards the end of last season, and is someone that will continue to grow with us.
Are we close to seeing him available for Pablo for selection?
We are close.
Okay.
I don't have a guarantee, but if I had to guess, I feel good about his ability to be available this weekend. But it's out of my hands.
Fair enough. All right, Stein Spearings, Dutch midfielder. Most recently was in Denmark. Same question. Yeah. What should we know about him?
He should be here this week as well.
Good.
He's a guy, this is another guy that we actually have seen over a number of years since he was in Toulouse in France, and we were actually watching one of his teammates, and he's just a really smart soccer player, I guess is the way to say it. Like he understands space really well. He does a great job of getting in passing lanes, of intercepting things and breaking things up defensively. But he also does an excellent job of distributing when we have the ball and being an option, changing the point of attack, finding good combinations, good short combinations, but also opening the game up going forward. So he's someone that we think will upgrade our ability in possession through the midfield and add something that we haven't had as much there in the last year or so.
Lucas Engel. Let's move over to Lucas. That signing was made official a few weeks ago, but just same question. What should we know about this new player?
Yeah, obviously he took a little knock last week. Otherwise, he would have been in. I think Lucas is everything you want in a defender, where he's just consistent, reliable, does what he needs to do really, really well every time out, left-footed. The distribution is actually not going to be much different, from what we had last year with Brian Vera. He has the ability to hit that long diagonal, and I don't know if he shoots the ball quite as hard from 40 or 50 yards, but it's hopefully we won't need to see that as much. But he does a great job. He's played left back. He's played left center back. He has excellent timing in the air, good 1v1 defending ability, and again, another player that can read the game and organize really well and does talk and communicate more than we've had out of those positions in the last few years.
Last one, Juan Jose Arias, and I believe he also picked up a bit of an injury, Kurt. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, Juan Jose. He picked up an injury last season, actually, with Nacional. and he was close to coming back. But when we looked at him before signing him, it looked a little, it looked like something that he just needed a little more time with, So yeah, it just required a little bit of creativity on our part to structure things accordingly in a way that kind of made everyone happy. But he's here and he's coming along in his rehabilitation. I'm not going to put a time or a date on it. It's obviously, we probably would have done it if it was a long time. So it's something that, we don't think we need to wait for the whole year for, but he's a young center back that, when you meet him and talk to him, you actually don't realize that because he's so mature. He speaks already very good English, which is a new one for me with, a lot of players his age coming out of South America don't speak English as well as he does. And that's helped him integrate really quickly into the group. He's another one. He's good passing, good distribution, has excellent speed and athleticism, 1v1 defending, was very good in Colombia, when we watched him down there. So he's someone that we're really excited about. And it's great to have another good young center back, a good young player coming through the system. And, I think once he gets healthy, the fans will see that.
I believe you have held on to another DP spot for the summer window. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, we have the ability to add one. Yeah, correct.
Any other roster, decisions or mechanisms? Because the World Cup break is, and you're going to have to tell me because I'm certainly not up to date on all this stuff, but you have more matches after the summer window than really historically speaking. So you will have time to make additions and then enough games to actually acclimate and maybe make a difference. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. The last few years, it's been more of a 2/3, 1/3 situation. This year, it's a little more half and half, which is really good.
So when it comes to this spot, take us through the process as to why you decided to hold on to it. Is there a player out there that you're maybe hoping to add, like somebody you're looking at, or is that just something you guys decided as a group, like, let's see what we have with this group and then decide what we need to add to in the summer window?
Yeah, I think with the number of changes that we've made, it's enough that we'll see things that maybe we can't necessarily predict right now, given how many new pieces have come in. And so it's really about seeing what this group looks like together. Seeing also what the summer window brings in terms of other, ins or outs, and then also, how the system fits together, the 3-4-2-1, how that looks in the first half of the season, and then just making an assessment about how can we improve the team, improve the group, and complement what we've got going on. We're very happy with the signings we made. So when we look at it, we're like, look, we've addressed the needs we identified going into the off season. There's not one other sort of gaping hole that we think we need to plug necessarily with the DP right now. So let's see what this group can put together, and then as we head towards the summer window, then we'll decide whether it's do we need someone here, do we need someone there, or if there's another option there.
Last thing, Kurt, I'll set you loose. A club you know very, very well, Seattle rose into town for the home opener coming up on Saturday. And randomly, a little bit strangely, RSL's had a ton of success against Seattle at home. And I just say that because they're always really, really good. A lot of very familiar names that played here, coached here, a lot of very familiar names that you worked with a few additions here or there. But it's a quality side. A lot of people think they'll have something to say about the West. So what should we know about Seattle? And what are you guys up against in the home opener coming up on Saturday?
Seattle is, they're just very consistent, right? They've been consistent for a long time, and they're always a team that, the floor is always very high. And we know no matter what's going on with them, no matter who they may have lost or added in the offseason, no matter who might be injured or not, it's going to be a tough game. I know a few years ago now they had a game on the road where they were missing half their team, and they rolled into it, and got a win with, maybe one or two starters and the rest of them almost academy kids. So, you can never count out a team like that. And they've got a very strong history and culture about them. And it's an opponent that we're always going to need to be wary of, and we are wary of. And so we got to prepare correctly and make sure we come out and do our game and play our game, because, I think the game this past weekend, despite whatever personnel issues are there, I thought the players executed the game plan pretty well, pretty faithfully. And, there's a bounce here or a bounce there, but I thought they did really well. Maybe with a little bit of luck, that goal stands. With a little bit more luck, maybe their goal doesn't go in, and it's a different result. So I think, from a process standpoint, the process looks pretty good right now, and I think we're all confident of it leading to different results.
All right, man. Well, it's always fun when you guys are back because we have actual games to talk about. So I appreciate your time. Good luck on Saturday, Kurt. We'll chat soon, okay?
All right, sounds good.
All right, Kurt Schmidt, RSL technical director. It was a loss against Vancouver, but a really encouraging sign that so many of these young players are already this talented. Now, I don't think any of us want to see a lineup without the featured players that this team has spent money on, but it sounds like what Kurt just said, we could see quite a few of them coming up on Saturday. So maybe Stein, potentially Stein Spearians, who is thought to be this. I always described to me that he's a little bit Beckerman-like, and I always hesitate to do that because my guy KB5 is a legend, but he's a central holding mid that has a lot of physicality. So maybe we'll see Stein. Juan Manuel Sanabria. Maybe we'll see Sanabria coming up on Saturday as well. And the player that we're all looking to learn a little bit more about, Morgan Guilavogi, the designated player that will play up alongside Victor Olatunji as strikers if Olatunji plays. We got to get a health update. We'll bring that to you prior to the match on Saturday, but RSL.com is where you go to get tickets for the home opener against Seattle. Want to let you know that League One Volleyball is Utah's next professional volleyball team. Or I should say League One Volleyball is Utah's professional volleyball team. They're not next, they're here now. The next home game is at Bruin Arena tomorrow. Get your tickets today at lovbsl.com. That's lovbsl.com, our friends at League One Volleyball, Utah's professional volleyball team. All right, 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. 5 o'clock hour of the program today is all about the fact that the gold medal in USA Really glad Yusuf Nurkic is getting this problem addressed and taken care of. Porter, we'll head into the ESPN 700 stats and info room / producer room / where you're standing. Give us the update on what must have been just a really difficult decision for Yusuf Nurkic to get what is frankly a harrowing health issue taken care of.
Yeah, a procedure on his nose, not a nose job, not elective in that regard, but he's experienced complications breathing with a broken nose he suffered a few years ago. So, think of when you get the deviated septum, you can't really all the way.
Mm-hmm.
Getting that figured out.
Yeah.
So he'll be back to full strength next year.
All right. Well, let me be the first to offer thoughts and prayers.
Yeah.
To Yusuf Nurkic.
I would like to get that done as well.
Yeah, but you have a job to do.
It seems like it would be, it is, from what I understand, a really painful, like not fun situation.
Mm.
But like half or more of us are good candidates for getting it done and will benefit from it.
It seems just like, okay, so if the Jazz were about to win 55, 60 games and maybe compete for a championship, would our boy Nurk be having surgery today?
Probably not.
Okay, yeah.
But like I said,
yeah.
You could probably get more players that need the deviated septum surgery done.
Yeah.
Throw them in there.
Yeah. All right. Well,
you want to do it?
Yeah. I don't. I don't need it done.
Okay.
And I'm an employee that shows up to work. That's what I do. I'm old school that way.
Yeah, you do. 4 hours every day.
Indeed. Live. Chris Camarada, Yusuf Nurkic out for the season. The Jazz are playing a game tonight. You know the deal by now. It is on Peacock, so the nation will be subjected to a team that is unserious about competing. Houston Rockets, little Spurs Pistons going on right now, and then Kings Grizzlies. Not an awesome night of NBA basketball. On the college basketball side of things, we've got a Big 12 matchup getting going in about an hour. Allen Fieldhouse in Lawrence, Kansas. You're a guy that pays attention to the draft. You're a guy that pays attention to prospects. What do you make of the Darren Peterson thing? How is it landing with you? If you were an NBA roster constructor, would this approach change your opinion about whether or not you should look to draft him?
In almost any other year, it wouldn't, just because he's like a bona fide number one guy. But with an AJ DeBonsa, with a Cam Boozer, and frankly, a few other players that recently have, I think, started to enter themselves into this conversation, you got to think about it, right? Because ultimately, as we just got done talking about it, availability is a huge part of your production, of an investment that you're going to make. And if you're an NBA basketball team, it is a multi-million-dollar investment. I think Sarah had some good points in the fact that this is an 18-year-old kid that is getting advice somewhere. And also, injuries are real. Like, that's another thing. But, man, it's been seemingly like every other game, there's a question about whether Darren Peterson is going to play and how many minutes he's going to do it. So it's something that you have to take into account. But then I also remember Kyrie Irving at Duke, right, who Karl Anthony Towns at Kentucky, Anthony Davis at Kentucky. Now, to be fair, those guys have all had injury issues in the league as well, but they've also had really productive careers. And probably if you ask, do you draft him again? You probably say yeah. So I don't know. That's the real question, is that it is still a question mark with Darren Peterson, and that leaves the door open for AJ DeBonsa, Cam Boozer, and a few other guys, I think, to potentially jump into that combo.
You got to give it to AJ, because when Richie got hurt, I'm like, well, okay. And look, it was a great win for BYU on Saturday night in Provo. Iowa State is awesome. That's a good team. Okay, so that may have answered some questions for BYU fans that were nervous about what the Richie Saunders injury means for the rest of the year and what is still possible. I mean, look, even with Richie Saunders, they were probably the 6th or the 7th best team in the Big 12, trending towards a 7, 8, maybe even 9 seed if they kept spiraling in the wrong direction. And without him, I have a hard time seeing what they can do in this league that is a bare night tonight. I mean, Arizona beat Houston over the weekend. Houston is so freaking good and impressive in person. Arizona was without Koa Pete. They still get that done. this league is wild. I mean, every night something crazy happens that you didn't see coming. So BYU been able to get Iowa State by 10 Saturday night in Provo, and AJ nearly had a triple-double. But there were a lot of conversation like, okay, Richie Saunders is hurt. You guys probably aren't going to be able to get much done this year. What's the point in you playing? Will he pull a Darren Peterson? AJ plays. He wants to play. He plays his ass off. He guards. He's a smart basketball player offensively with a complete skill set. But I love that he just shows up and competes, and he wants to compete. So to Porter's point, like the danger here, if the injuries are real, I'd be far more concerned about injury prone as opposed to sitting out to put yourself on ice for an NBA career, because I understand that. I know these guys are being paid $4, $5, $6, sometimes even more than that, $7, $8 million a year. And that's unbelievable money. We would all take that. But the goal has been now for quite some time, get to your second NBA contract and your grandkids don't have to worry about anything. I mean, you can create generational wealth in a way that if you stay healthy in the NBA, you'll never be able to, achieve in college unless the landscape continues to change. Darren Peterson has sat out 11 of the 27 Kansas games and has played in fewer than 25 minutes in 7 of his 16 appearances as a result of what's being characterized as hamstring issues, ankle issues, and persistent cramping issues. Okay? After Kansas beat Arizona without Darren Peterson benched himself in the second half of a victory at Oklahoma State, which, by the way, is where Bill Self went to college. It was Peterson's shortest outing of the season, 18 minutes, and that's when people started to pay attention. But this has been happening all year long. Of course, we're in the Big 12 footprint, so ultimately we probably pay more attention to it. And look, I really like Bill Self. I think he's a really good coach, and I've always appreciated, for the most part, his candor and honesty with the media. But you can tell this is wearing on him. You really can. I just have to wonder if you're a scout, if you're a general manager, if you're somebody that is trying to analyze whether or not you want to generate what ultimately at some point might be over $100 million to a player that you're going to build your team around. You better do your due diligence behind closed doors to really understand what's going on. I mean, Self was asked about it after the game in Stillwater. Said, quote, "Well, I thought we were past it, but obviously we're not. It's certainly a concern. You get into the NCAA tournament, you're playing a team just as good as you, and you need to have all your best players available, so to speak. All it takes for one day like this to derail not only a game but a season." And it's become a storyline every single night. I mean, if all things were equal, I do think Darren Peterson is the better prospect than AJ. But AJ, to me, has shown a lot of intangible things that Darren Peterson just has not and will not. And as I referenced, they've got Houston tonight. I don't even know if Darren Peterson is playing. Houston just got by Arizona. Kansas beat Arizona because this league is nuts. But at this point, you're trying to lock in a top 1 or 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. And if you lock in one of those top seeds, your region's going to be better. Your chances to play your way through the tournament is going to be better. But look, I just wonder whether it's BYU's lack of depth because of what they paid AJ Devonta and Rob Wright, or the chaos that Kansas is dealing with as it pertains to Darren Peterson. I wonder if it's going to change the decision-making process of roster constructors. Like, I'm going to allocate my financial resources to locking in 5, 6, 7 really good players and leave these top-end guys to go do their own thing, because it really hasn't worked. So it's interesting. I mean, no one knows exactly what's going on. No one knows exactly how much of this is Darren Peterson, his handlers. How much does Bill Self know about this? What was agreed upon as it pertains to his availability? What the injuries are really looking like? And I don't know, man. I don't know. I think you'd have to look at AJ as a player that's shown himself, at least as a guy that wants to show up and compete in a way that so far Darren Peterson is not. But it's Houston, Kansas tonight. The Utes nearly picked up a win against UCF, starting to see a little growth in the right direction. UCF, a good team that can really score. They were without their leading scorer. And tomorrow night, if you want to see a really good team, Iowa State is in town to take on the Utes. They lost to BYU on Saturday. That's a good team with a couple of pros. So that's the game tomorrow. And we're going to take you to the Utah Coaches Show, the Alex Jensen Coaches Show, coming up on the other side of a quick break. But Porter, before we break, what comes our way on a Tuesday edition of the radio show?
Tuesday edition of The Drive. Our guy Chris Kamrani will be in studio. Tim McMahon will stop by for the NBA Daily Assist. And since Dave Fox is entirely busy this week, Adam Mikulich is going to stop by as well.
Dave is in Disneyland acting like a child. Okay.
Did you listen to the sound on that video I sent you?
No, I was on air when you sent it, so I just watched the video.
Dave sounds like a child at Disneyland, squealing and hooting and hollering. It's honestly, Spence, if there's one thing in this life that I hope people can do, it is to like hold on to the child in them the way Dave Fox has.
No, I agree. See, I agree with that sentiment, but the cringy thing, like Dave wears straight brim hats. He's 70, like he showed up to lunch with like a vest and a straight brim hat on, like he was a motorcycler from, performing up at Rice-Eccles Stadium. It's one thing to hold on to the inner child. It's another thing to be a real-life Steve Buscemi hat backwards gif, and that's what Dave is. Like the music he makes you play for him, his walk-up song.
Bands that he goes up to the union and sees.
Exactly. So anyway.
I love it.
So we are going to have Dave on the show? We are? We're not going to have him?
Adam.
Well, we're going to have Adam. Nice.
It's Adam Spence on a
there we go.
On a Tuesday.
The GOAT, my guy Adam Mikulich. All right. We'll say goodnight. Special thank you today to Sarah Todd, Nicola Check, as well as Kevin Reynolds and Kurt Schmidt. If you missed any of the sound, website's ESPN700sports.com. Download our app. Take us on the go. It's the ESPN 700 app. It's available for free. App Store, Google Play Store. Then our podcast is called The Drive with Spence Checketts. It's available wherever you get your shows. Please subscribe, rate, review, say nice things in the comments, and give us all the stars. For Porter, I'm Spence saying goodnight. Have a great Monday evening. We'll talk to you on a Tuesday drive right here on